Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
The students were outraged and deeply sympathetic toward Lin Youzi. The police called Lin Youzi to ask if he'd accept an in-person apology. That won't be necessary. I don't really mind. If that's all, I'd like to rest, it's getting late. All right. The young officer, after hanging up, sat in silence. He had watched the video and knew that Lin Youzi was beautiful, innocent, sweet, and, well, the list went on. She was admirable in so many ways, and now he had to add resilience to the list, as she showed no bitterness even with her disability. It was hard not to be impressed. Despite feeling indignant on her behalf, the officer knew he couldn't bring personal feelings into his work. Lin Youzi doesn't need your in-person apology, he told the girl, but you will need to write a letter promising not to repeat this behavior. Fine, I'll write it, the girl said, relieved at not having to apologize face-to-face, which would have been far too humiliating for her. In truth, Lin Youzi genuinely didn't care. To him, it was just another way the universe seemed to be testing him. There was a strange satisfaction in this endless sparring with fate, a challenge he took up willingly. But for now, he just wanted a good night's sleep, to gather his energy and continue his silent struggle with the heavens the next day. He didn't need an apology either, he and that girl existed on different planes. If a mosquito bothered him, he wouldn't waste his time swatting it, he'd simply light a coil and let all the mosquitoes take care of themselves. October 6th. It was a lucky day when wishes were bound to come true. The cafeteria incident had made its way online, quickly trending. Many people edited the video of the incident, emphasizing the moment when food was thrown at Lin Youzi, slowing it down and adding sorrowful music for dramatic effect. It was enough to bring tears to anyone watching, a mix of empathy and heartbreak. Viewers found a humorous detail in the video, too. That cafeteria manager's reaction is hilarious. Honestly, we should be grateful to the manager. If not for him, my girl would have been hit. Cafeteria manager. Get lost, that's my girl. Disgusting. Anytime you guys see a pretty girl, you claim she's yours. She's my girl. Please, just go away. Fine, your girl can be yours, but you're all mine. Cafeteria manager, seriously? Not a single word for me. Apparently not. In the video, Lin Youzi's troubled yet graceful expression sparked a lot of sympathy, and people began wondering if she had eaten that night. In fact, Lin Youzi hadn't eaten dinner, but skipping one meal was no big deal. He'd also discovered that his holy water protection could actually eliminate his sense of hunger. It was bizarre, to say the least. Early that morning, he went out to buy groceries, wearing a mask just in case fate decided to mess with him again. The supermarket cashier, who'd seen him often, recognized him immediately. Hey, aren't you that student from the cafeteria video? At that, some early morning shoppers noticed and quickly pulled out their phones to record him. Nowadays, people's first reaction was to film, both as a safeguard against accusations and to capture viral moments from everyday life. Just like this one. Footage of Lin Youzi buying groceries hit the trending lists again, leaving the subject himself completely bewildered. Half an hour after returning from the supermarket, he sat in his room, scrolling through his phone. Hashtag Lin Youzi grocery shopping hashtag. The hashtag was now trending, with the topic gaining momentum fast. Some had even posted photos of his grocery items, noting they were quite simple and basic. At the supermarket, groceries weren't eligible for discounts. Some items were costly, and a discount would mean a loss for the store. The cafeteria, on the other hand, had specific discount zones. The 30% discount card was only valid on the first floor, where prices were set to be more affordable. But not many people knew about these limitations if they hadn't looked into it. In the video, Lin Youzi was seen paying full price for her groceries. When she noticed someone filming her, she frowned slightly, a hint of resignation flashing in her pretty eyes before she left quickly. The person filming then asked the cashier if she shopped there often, thinking she might be aware of her popularity and trying to cash in on it by making grocery trips to transition into an influencer. Since it was a slow morning, the cashier replied, "Not at all. I've seen this student come here many times, even last month. She always buys a few basic items, and it's always the same kind of groceries. I actually have the purchase records right here, take a look. The cashier showed the records to the camera, confirming that the most expensive items she'd bought didn't exceed 20 yuan. 20 yuan, how does she manage on that? Viewers' imaginations ran wild. She could rely on her looks alone if she wanted to, but instead, she worked to support herself. When they thought of relying on looks, they meant finding followers willing to support her. But it seemed Lin Youzi hadn't chosen that route. She was focused on buying her own ingredients and cooking her own meals. Then, some comments started popping up. Aren't high-power appliances prohibited in college dorms? Isn't cooking unsafe? This person didn't just comment, they tagged Wanan's fire safety department. She's probably just trying to be famous. How else would she get caught on camera so perfectly? Bet the cashier's part of her team, too. And so what if she's becoming famous? I love watching her. If she doesn't become an influencer, where else can I see someone like her? In an era of beauty filters, that cafeteria video was proof that Lin Youzi's beauty was natural. Who wouldn't want to see more of someone as genuinely beautiful and pure as her? Exactly, let's support Lin in going public. You chip in, I chip in, let's make her debut happen. What debut? Does she have any skills, can she sing or act? Just banking on her looks. Yes, she's relying on her looks. She doesn't need to be an actress, just an idol, shining in her own way. None of your business. Ridiculous, you're all delusional. Naturally, some who didn't like Lin Youzi argued with the fans. Some were just jealous, annoyed at the thought of her amassing popularity and potentially cutting into their own slice of attention. In the world of influencers, fame and fanbases were a zero-sum game. When one person gained, others lost. To Lin Youzi, however, the idea of debuting was laughable. There was no benefit for him in it. Money. There was no need to worry about that right now. Time was still on his side. And besides, once Mystic Realm OL descended, money would lose its value. But one thing would always remain crucial: food. Were it not for Huayu's strict restrictions on private hoarding of grain, he would have started stockpiling ages ago. For now, he'd settled on keeping plenty of seeds in his eastern warehouse, Mystic Realm OL crop seeds, which he expected would yield well. In the game, it was easy: planting, harvesting, weeding, pest control, watering, and fertilizing were all streamlined with automated instructions. In reality, though, none of those guides would be there, meaning he'd actually have to learn all these skills. No way. He shook his head, half annoyed. Forget it, when Mystic Realm OL descended, he'd just hire people to do the farming. Right now, he needed to pick up his arrows. Putting his phone away, he ignored the online discussions about him, hailed a cab, and headed straight for the Cold Weapons shop. Cold Weapons shop. The shop owner was at the counter, watching the tournament schedule on his computer. Tomorrow's match would take place at the Wan'an City Commercial Center, using a 16-zone free-for-all format. Each zone was designed with various obstacles and shelters, simulating different environments. Some areas had icy floors, some were shrouded in mist, and others had strong winds. Wan'an City had put significant effort into creating these settings. The purpose was clear: to eliminate as many participants as possible. The rules were straightforward: only those still standing by the end of the allotted time would move on to the next round. Each participant would fight in 10 matches during the preliminaries, held once every 2 days, spanning 20 days. These early rounds aimed to weed out casual participants and lucky contenders, so the main rounds would feature only skilled competitors. The shop owner crossed his hands, deep in thought. The military would be sending elite fighters, along with some prominent second-generation figures. And, of course, civilian experts would also be competing. Too bad I'm not a realm practitioner, he thought, sighing. By the time Mystic Realm OL came out, he was older and hadn't been able to focus much on combat, so he'd become skilled in weapon forging instead, a life profession in the game. Just then, the door opened. Quickly, he switched tabs, accidentally landing on a kid's cartoon called Doll Bus, but didn't notice as he stood up to greet his customer. "Hey, I'm here to pick up the arrows," Lin Youzi's voice rang out. The shop owner rolled his eyes internally. Lately, it felt as if his shop had turned into an arrow supply station. "You're just in time," he said, walking out from behind the counter. "After you pick up these arrows, I have some news for you." As Lin Youzi fitted his arrows into the quiver, he glanced back. "What is it?" "Well, starting tomorrow, the shop will be closed for a while," the owner explained. "You know, with the tournament starting, I've been invited as a weaponry consultant, so I won't have time to stay here." "Got it. I probably won't need the bow and arrows much anyway." "Right. They'll be supplying weapons at the tournament, all made from wood or soft rubber. It'll hurt and leave a mark, but nothing fatal." Being the association president, he knew these weapons inside out. If a weapon left a mark on a designated vital area, it would count as a death. Vital spots would be marked with color-changing stickers, which would shift color upon impact of a certain force. Participants would feel dizzy, a subtle reminder that they had been eliminated. If they ignored the effect, the weapon would release a stronger dose of sedative. After listening to the explanation, Lin Youzi nodded. It seemed these rules would be explained in detail at the tournament, so knowing them ahead of time was a slight advantage. But will there be any bows available? A bow. The shop owner looked at him, surprised. Very few people opted for bows in the tournament. "Let me be honest with you, if you use a bow, you'll likely only get one shot before your chance is gone." The shop owner explained that the tournament's short-range setup made archery nearly useless. Since the event aimed to promote fitness, they hadn't designed areas suited to archers. Besides, if an archer hit away and struck only when others were off guard, it would take all day to finish the match. Archers were like snakes, waiting for the perfect moment to land a lethal blow. Lin Youzi didn't know what to say. If he couldn't use a bow, what could he rely on? Should he pick up the Guan family's blade techniques? No time for that. What did he know from his previous life? After thinking carefully, he realized he hadn't mastered any specific techniques back then. If it came down to it, he could just pick something easy and brute force his way through with physical strength. "Fine, I'll go with a short blade," he thought. But he hesitated. Getting up close would be risky. Should he go with a spear instead? Longer weapons had better reach, after all. But if he went with a spear, all he'd know to do was wave it around randomly. Making choices really was difficult. "Wait, why can't I just bring everything?" That was a great idea, he complimented himself with a satisfied smile. "Shop owner, I'm off now. I've decided what weapons I'll use in the tournament." "All right." After Lin Youzi left, the shop owner fell into thought. This would be the last martial arts tournament, so he wanted it to be a memorable send-off. Archery. Got it. An idea struck him. He'd create a specialized tournament bow and arrow set that wouldn't disrupt the game's balance. The requirements were clear: it needed to have a reasonable range, good accuracy, and low impact. Even if the arrow was made of a soft material, the force could still cause injury, especially to sensitive areas like the eyes. So the choice of materials would need careful research. With this in mind, he closed up the shop and went to find some researchers to help develop a safe tournament-grade bow and arrow set. Can't leave an archer without a way to keep their distance. When Lin Youzi returned to campus, his 3 roommates were already back. He had seen the buzz on the campus forum and the trending news online. "So, little Lin has been out stirring things up again. Why not stir things up with me?" Ahem. The eldest roommate cleared his throat awkwardly, noticing Lin Youzi standing in the doorway with a quiver of arrows on his back. "Little Lin, are you learning archery now?" he asked. "Yeah." Lin Youzi nodded. "Nice. With your health, archery's a good fit." "Exactly. Leave the up-close combat to the brave and brawny." The second roommate, a bit puffed up from his own training at home, flexed his biceps dramatically. After watching for a moment, Lin Youzi finally muttered, "I wasn't stirring up anything." With that, he headed up the stairs. The trio stood in silence for a moment. Is little Lin mad? Was it my fault? The eldest roommate finally caught on, pointing to himself sheepishly. The other 2 nodded in unison. Yep. Definitely your fault. Stirring things up. Hearing that phrase, Lin Youzi couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. He was clearly a guy. Well, even if not a big, tough guy, he was still a man. He felt the warmth of the 6 flower-like marks glowing faintly on his shoulder, as if they had something to say about that. Feeling a surge of heat, he frowned and hurried to the bathroom, hoping a cold shower would help. As the cold water flowed over his collarbone, down to his shoulder, and across the marks, faint wisps of steam rose. The heat was intense. The holy water protection was still on cooldown, so he couldn't clear this strange condition. What's happening, he wondered, the sensation oddly reminiscent of that kiss. Could it be that the holy water's blessing was meant to counteract this exact situation? The temperature kept rising, so much that he felt a throbbing headache as the water continued to pour down on him. Minutes passed, but the scorching sensation didn't fade. In fact, his mind began to blur. He quickly turned off the shower, threw on a robe, and stumbled to his bed. Setting the AC to its lowest temperature, he collapsed onto the mattress, unable to keep himself conscious any longer. After he lost consciousness, the flowers on his shoulder fixed in color. The side effects of exceeding 5 petals were taking their toll, and his body began to undergo subtle changes. All male characteristics were gradually softened or erased, as if someone had meticulously sculpted away any rough or inconsistent features. An intense wave of heat lingered, pausing briefly before retreating without removing any extra parts, but something new had already begun to form. 6 petals, anew. You get the idea. 7 petals, hormones shift, suppressing the original ones. 8 petals, new hormones encourage the growth of her organs. 9 petals, the chest begins to show signs of development, secondary characteristics emerge. 10 petals, essence returns, abilities unlock, and she fully inherits the character panel of Mystic Realm OL. October 7th. The morning light filled the room. Tomorrow was the day the tournament would begin. All students participating were required to present their entry form and request leave today. Early in the morning, the Bitter Melon Trio set out. Today, the academic office was open specifically for this purpose. Starting at 7 a.m., the leave request window opened, as it did every year. The director himself would be present, overseeing the process and verifying each entry form. Anonymously registered participants would also be allowed through, as the director would only record the code on their forms. Meanwhile, in Lin Youzi's room at 7 a.m., his hair seemed slightly longer, and the mark on his shoulder no longer burned. Images swirled in his mind as he lay there, half awake, dreamlike scenes flashing through his head. In these visions, he saw himself entering a place steeped in death, rescuing others but ultimately staying behind alone. Ah! The feeling of death jolted him awake. What kind of dream was that? He shook his head, still haunted by a strange sense of unease. He recalled an earlier dream where he'd been trampled by a demon horse at Wanan Martial Arts University. And now, this unsettling place of darkness, why would he risk himself to save others in such a deadly location? He felt a shiver of confusion, but he dismissed it and got up to wash. Brr, so cold. Achoo. It seemed he'd caught a cold. Sleeping by the bed all night with the AC blasting had left him chilled. And for some reason, holy water protection was still on cooldown. That was the drawback of a passive skill, no manual control. He put on a mask and left the dorm, knowing that, like everyone else, he'd need to submit his entry form at the academic office. At the office, a long line of students had already formed. It was only 8 a.m., but just the sight of the line made him feel a bit queasy. The sun was already out, and the heat seemed to blur his vision. Can't be. I'm a yellow stage first rank, after all. Feeling uneasy, he glanced at his character panel. To his surprise, it read. Name, Lin Youzi. Gender, unknown error. Stage, yellow stage, first rank, under negative status restriction. Abilities. That explains why I feel so weak, he thought, surprised at how the sun seemed to sap his energy completely. This isn't working, I need a break. I'll come back tonight. The rising temperature, combined with his fever and sweat, made the situation unbearable. Despite the heat, he felt chills running through him. With holy water protection still cooling down, he would only be free of this state tomorrow, but for today, he was utterly drained, barely able to make it halfway down the line before needing to rest. Reaching a shaded pavilion, he collapsed onto a bench, breathing heavily. Without my powers, I'm no better than a weakling, he thought with a wry smile, slumping into the seat. The pavilion was surrounded by a bamboo grove, blocking out the harsh sunlight, and the breeze rustled through the leaves, creating a soothing sound. Thank goodness it's the sound of bamboo leaves, and not bamboo vipers. In October, it wasn't uncommon to encounter snakes in some grassy areas. People often assumed they were far from campus life, but really, they weren't. Thickly wooded areas or grassy banks near college lakes often used a variety of wildlife. These areas were ecologically diverse and minimally managed. The snakes here had no natural predators, truly, they were invincible. Pavilions were spaced a short distance apart, each with its own name. This particular one was called the Heart of Wan Lake Pavilion. For a pavilion meant to offer shade, good feng shui was essential, and indeed, the warm breeze from the lake, combined with the cool shade from the bamboo groves, created a refreshingly cool spot. This place had become a popular hangout for couples. The bamboo forest acted as a natural barrier, providing a bit of privacy for those looking to, well, those who understood. Sitting in the pavilion, Lin Youzi could see couples in neighboring pavilions. One of them even had two couples, oblivious to everyone else, engrossed in each other. 4 people were lost in their own world, hands roaming freely. Too awkward to keep looking, Lin Youzi turned away, facing another pavilion. Yet the battle, in that direction, was even more intense. They weren't just kissing, they were getting hands-on. Were these people planning to turn this into some wild, passionate encounter? The truth was, some people were indeed there for the thrill. The world was vast, and unusual desires were not uncommon. But still, have some decency. There were others around, he wasn't blind. Lin Youzi didn't know where to look. His head started to spin, feeling faint, his temples pulsing from the sight. To his left, 2 couples were tangled together. Wait a second. Had they just switched partners? No, something was off, these 2 didn't even look like students. During national holidays, like the National Day holiday, Wan City's Wuhan University temporarily allowed non-students to visit campus with reservations, hoping to increase public exposure. After a recent incident in the cafeteria, the university president had decided to let visitors in to showcase the campus in a positive light. At this moment, the president himself was giving a campus tour to the Wan City media, followed by a crowd of live streamers who saw an opportunity and started filming everywhere. They began at the academic office, where they explained the martial arts tournament, and how students in line were participants, showing the university's rich martial spirit. They moved on to the cafeteria, dorms, classrooms, teaching resources, faculty, and even the library, wrapping up with the scenic parts of campus. Starting from the roadside trees, the president guided everyone down to the lakeside. In front of the media cameras, he walked backward, extolling the beauty of the lake and promoting the university with every step. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is October 7th. Look at these lotus blossoms, how vibrantly they bloom. Look at these bamboos, how strong and tall. Here at Wuhan University by Wan Lake, we eagerly await our new students. The faculty and I are here to welcome you all. Before he could finish, the president misstepped and fell backward into the lake. Oh no, President. Someone help him. Chaos erupted as security guards and teachers rushed forward. The viewers watching the live stream were in stitches. Ha ha ha, Wuhan University's president is hilarious. This is the first time I've seen a campus tour go this wrong. The president is giving it his all. I'm dying here. Hey, look at the camera, is that Lin we're seeing over there? After being pulled from the lake, the president waved it off casually. Now, students, don't do what I just did. The lake water's a bit cold. His easygoing humor had everyone laughing. But the viewers were far more interested in whether that person in the pavilion was Lin. Responding to the online comments, the Wan City media reporter pointed toward the pavilion and asked the president, "President, is that a student of yours over there? Do you mind if we go over and ask him a few questions about his thoughts on the university?" No problem at all, of course. The president had no objections and, after a quick outfit change, set off with the group once more. The pavilions around the lake were connected, with several paths leading to each. The route the president took would bring them directly to Lin Youzi's pavilion. Earlier that morning, feeling dizzy from the humid yet breezy atmosphere, Lin Youzi had drifted off to sleep without realizing it. He'd been slumped over the wooden table, breathing heavily, a clear sign of a cold. From morning until afternoon, he'd slept there undisturbed. Meanwhile, the nearby pavilions had emptied out for hours, leading certain people to think they had the place to themselves. Turns out, these were people illegally live streaming on campus, hoping to cash in on the location's popularity. In their live streams, some viewers had noticed Lin Youzi. "Look at the pavilion across from you, is that Lin Goddess from online? Go over there and confront them, and I'll send you a universe spaceship gift. I'll add to that. Count me in." Encouraged by his VIP viewers, the streamer zoomed in with his phone camera, and sure enough, it was Lin. "Boss, I don't think this is a good idea. This is Wuhan University, messing around here could get me arrested. It's illegal." "And what about illegal live streaming, does that count?" "I don't care, just get over there, and at least strip her down. I know what you're after. You want more money, right? Fine, that's easy." With universe spaceships flooding his screen, the streamer grinned, saying, "All right, boss. Wait and see." He left his shirt off, leading his female companion toward Lin's pavilion. The distance between pavilions was shorter than the path the president was taking. As the president and his entourage moved closer, he spoke about the university's long-standing commitment to student well-being, which drew positive comments from online viewers. But then, viewers noticed something shocking on the live stream: a man with no shirt. At the same moment, the president's group spotted him, too. Rubbing their eyes, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. In the pavilion, a flicker of blue light caught Lin Youzi's attention as he opened his eyes, only to find himself face to face with the same couple who had been so hands-on before. "Who are you? What do you want here?" "Damn, he's awake." The shirtless man's expression turned fierce, and without a word, he lunged forward, trying to grab Lin Youzi's shirt. His female companion quickly moved to block the other exit. "What do you think you're doing?" Although he was now awake, Lin Youzi still felt woozy from his cold. What he didn't realize was that he had unexpected help. The Queen of Lolan had taken an interest in him, and the blue light shimmering around the intruders indicated she could end them at any moment. But the Queen held back, wanting to see how her blessed one would handle the situation. "How am I supposed to handle this?" Lin Youzi thought. "I'm practically a normal person right now, with no abilities and a fever on top of that." He was weak and defenseless, and he could see their intention to strip him down. "Are you kidding me, universe? Seriously? Sending a shirtless lunatic to attack me when I'm this weak? Get lost," he growled. The men just laughed. "Come on, sweetheart, aren't you that Lin goddess everyone's been talking about online? Let me just take a look, I swear I won't touch you. Get lost." The argument grew louder, catching the attention of the president's group, who quickened their pace. Viewers in the live stream chat were in a frenzy. What the hell? How did these people get in here? Don't let them disrespect our goddess. Someone call the police. Why are people just watching? Get over there and help already. What, no one's got legs? The original design for this path was intended to promote a leisurely pace, encouraging people to take their time enjoying the scenery. But as the university president, he was more anxious than anyone. If anything happened, it would damage the reputation of the century-old institution. Some of the security guards couldn't take it anymore. The path was narrow, allowing only 2 people to walk side by side, so those at the back couldn't push through. With no other option, the guards leaped into the lake and swam across like human torpedoes, their speed astonishing. These security guards weren't amateurs, they were mostly related to Old Man Guan, a skilled martial artist. They knew Lin Youzi personally, often seeing him around the security pavilion, where he trained in horseback riding and archery. But personal connections aside, as guards, their duty was to protect students in need, no matter what. Their swift swimming brought them to the pavilion within moments. The shirtless man froze, momentarily shocked by the 2 people emerging from the water. What on earth was going on? Why were there people coming out of the lake? Just then, he looked up and saw a crowd of people flooding down the path. "Damn it, hurry up and strip his clothes," he shouted, still fixated on the promise of those universe spaceships. He lunged toward Lin Youzi, attempting to grab his shirt. Furious at the man's audacity, Lin Youzi timed his move perfectly, channeling all his strength into a single, brutal kick directly into the man's crotch. A sickening crack echoed. The man collapsed, writhing on the ground in agony, twisting like a worm. The sight made every onlooker instinctively wince, feeling an icy chill. But Lin Youzi wasn't done yet. He steadied his breath, then looked at the shocked woman blocking his path and delivered a swift kick to her as well. A collective gasp of silent horror spread. Pain doesn't discriminate. Although it may not be quite as excruciating for a woman, the impact still hurt. Lin's precision was impeccable. He'd struck at the exact moments when they were thrown off balance. By this time, the guards had climbed ashore, pinning the pair down. The president and his team arrived seconds later. After the crisis was resolved, viewers in the live stream chat couldn't help but notice a glaring oversight. Wan City media is family, no censorship at all. Shoo, don't point it out. The woman's figure isn't bad, but she's all plastic, those are silicone implants, so tacky. The next moment, a notice appeared. This live stream contains violations, management has ordered it to be taken down. Yet smaller, private streams continued broadcasting since they lacked the visibility to be flagged. One of these smaller streams even filmed a cinematic-style clip of two couples in the nearby pavilions. Soon, the police arrived. Seeing Lin Goddess in trouble again, they detained everyone involved, including those live streaming without permission. Violators faced full investigations and permanent app bans. As everything wrapped up, Lin Youzi's strength finally gave out. The Queen of Lolan withdrew her watchful presence, and the blue light around him faded, leaving him feeling dizzy and barely able to stay on his feet. "Lin, are you all right?" asked the president, concerned. "I'm fine," he replied, though unsteadily. Fortunately, the university's medical team was already on hand. They had arrived when the president fell into the lake, prepared for any emergency. "Lin, you don't look fine at all. You've got a fever. Don't ignore it, you should come to the medical center." In the end, Lin Youzi found himself at the campus medical center, taking medication and hooked up to N4. Outside the center, the live stream resumed. The president provided a brief explanation, noting that the troublemakers were unauthorized visitors looking to gain clout through illegal live streaming, exploiting the campus for profit. "Forget about them. We just want to know if our goddess is okay." "She's my goddess." "No, mine." "Don't argue, she's ours." The president smiled slightly, replying, "Lin's not doing too well, actually. She has a high fever and is currently resting with N4 drip." The camera panned to Lin Youzi, who sat quietly, looking as fragile as a porcelain doll, evoking genuine sympathy from everyone watching. Everyone was curious about why Lin, the Lin goddess, had fallen ill. Just then, the doctor came out and provided an explanation. Initially, she had caught a cold from being chilled, and later exposure to the sun caused her body temperature to rise, making her break out in cold sweats. This imbalance in her body's energy, combined with her naturally weak constitution, led to a fever. In other words, she had already been sick when she went out. Another cause, he added, was recent mental stress. The doctor had spoken with Lin Youzi, who mentioned he'd felt a bit under the weather as soon as he woke up. He'd planned to visit the administration office to request a leave but found a long line when he arrived, even though it was only 8 a.m. Standing in the sun while waiting made him dizzy, so he decided to rest in a pavilion, intending to come back around noon when it was less crowded. But he'd fallen asleep instead. The doctor sighed after recounting the story. He really does need to rest now. Besides the physical reasons, there's also the psychological strain he's been under, and he also has a disability. The doctor had seen his disability certificate and knew Lin Youzi had suffered a traumatic injury during a gap year when he'd been scammed and horrifically left with only one kidney. He kept this private, respecting the patient's confidentiality. But even the details he shared were enough to spark the imagination of the viewers. The journalist from Wan City Media wore a serious expression, and the other media personalities nearby, having realized the patient was the popular Lin goddess, stubbornly lingered, refusing to leave despite having little reason to stay. Online, viewers speculated that Lin's mental strain stemmed from the cafeteria incident a few days ago, which had likely cast a dark cloud over her mood. Whatever the reasons, everyone agreed, she'd had a rough time and deserved sympathy. She needs rest. Let's avoid disturbing her any further, the doctor said, politely urging the president to let her recuperate in peace. The president nodded, wishing her a restful space to recover, and led his group away. The major media left as well. Some of the smaller media personalities hesitated, clearly wanting to stay. But when they saw the doctor watching them intently, they reluctantly took the hint and retreated. Inside the campus medical center, Lin Youzi was indeed miserable. With the body of a regular person, he was experiencing a full-blown cold and fever. It was absolutely awful. Achoo. He'd removed his mask just to be able to breathe properly. His nose was completely blocked, so he'd stuffed 2 tissues into each nostril, looking thoroughly pitiful. Fun fact, when we breathe, only one nostril is actively in use while the other rests, alternating about every 4 hours. With both nostrils plugged, breathing becomes uncomfortable without removing the mask. In the distance, a media personality captured this pitiful scene on camera. So adorable. She's both funny and pitiful. Did you see that? Even the Lin goddess has to plug her nose when she has a cold. Thinking about how my nose runs non-stop when I have a cold, it's just the worst. With the video quickly gaining traction, the marketing accounts wasted no time cutting clips, creating eye-catching titles. Examples included: if you had a girlfriend this cute, what time would you come home? Help! How does she manage to be both pitiful and hilarious? Haha, I'm dying from laughter. How can someone be like this? Light-hearted titles like these soon went viral, but so did others highlighting the sadder aspects of her situation. Outrageous. Lin goddess is sick, and that cafeteria incident definitely played a part. Why hasn't the university expelled that person? Laughing at the president's lake fall, but this situation is just infuriating. How can someone be this unlucky? She must have the worst National Day holiday ever. The buzz was immense, with people across the country joining the conversation. Only those preparing for the martial arts tournament were left out. They were too busy getting ready for the competition starting tomorrow. For them, the priority was fine-tuning their skills and mental focus. Time continued to pass. The bitter-gourd trio returned to the small villa, leave forms in hand. Now, all they needed was their counselor's signature, and they'd be set to take time off. All the martial arts students were involved in the tournament, and even the professors were participating, so regular classes were effectively on hold. After all, practical experience often taught far more than anything in a book. This hands-on approach was one of the highlights of Wan City University's martial arts program. Extracurricular practical course, compete in the tournament. In the dormitory. Where's Shaolin? Haven't seen him all day. The kitchen was spotless, with no signs of any recent cooking, which meant he hadn't been around to make meals. After some discussion, the 3 roommates headed over to Lin Youzi's door and knocked. Knock, knock, knock. No answer. Is he missing? Where could he have gone? Should we just message him? Good idea. They had a dorm group chat, so the oldest sent a message. Oldest, Shaolin, are you out? Second, tomorrow's the start of term. Do you need to request a leave? The 3rd roommate stayed quiet. Shaolin, I'm out right now. I'll go get a leave note. Relieved by his reply, the trio's worries eased. Oldest, Shaolin, we were hoping to have one of your meals tonight. The 3 of us are competing, and we want to enjoy a feast. Shaolin, probably won't work. Lin Youzi sent a photo of himself, clearly hooked up to N4 in the medical center. Oldest, what happened? Second, where are you? Third, how did you get sick? We'll come over now. The grand dinner was forgotten instantly. Typing with one hand, Lin replied. Shaolin, I'm at the campus medical center. Oldest, we're on our way. Without even fully sitting down, the 3 roommates jumped up and rushed out. It was just after 2 p.m., the hottest time of day. Instead of relaxing in the air-conditioned dorm, they sped across campus in the blazing heat. Campus was nearly deserted under the sweltering sun. The only movement came from delivery trucks near the cafeteria and shop staff pouring water outside to cool things down. It was scorching, a blazing 36 degrees. By the time they reached the medical center, they were drenched in sweat. You guys actually came. Lin looked at them, half amused, half exasperated. He hadn't expected them to really show up. Did they think he'd be lonely or something? Him, lonely. He'd spent a whole year on medical leave, holed up in a rental apartment, gaming alone every day without ever feeling lonely. This short period of rest. No way he'd feel lonely. And yet, a faint warmth tinged his eyes. Maybe, he did feel a little lonely after all. Since his abilities had faded, he'd felt uncertain, vulnerable. Especially when he'd been confronted by that deranged man earlier, it had shaken him to the core. Seeing his friends now, a smile crept onto his face. But as he smiled, tears slipped down his cheeks. The trio froze, their breath slowing. They were momentarily at a loss, even forgetting the residual heat from their sprint. The doctor wasn't in the medical center, he was at the administration office. "Director, I have a patient here who's a returning student. You may know him." The doctor was there to expedite a leave form. "What's the name?" "Lin Youzi, from the martial arts program." "All right, here's the leave form. Go ahead and take it." Normally, one person pulling strings wouldn't be enough to expedite the process. But with the combined influence of the president and the doctor, the director nodded and granted the request. The doctor's dedication, the roommate's willingness to rush over, the president's apologetic announcement, and the quick response from law enforcement, all of it was truly moving. The 2 security guards who had leapt into the lake were given a raise. Through this incident, it became clear to everyone that Wuhan University in Wuhan City held martial virtues in high regard. Anyone planning to cause trouble here would face a security team brimming with martial prowess. In an official announcement, the president also issued an apology, expressing sincere regret for the distress caused to Lin. Meanwhile, the police had wrapped up their investigation. The 6 intruders were all live streamers violating campus regulations. The 4 who engaged in partner swapping received 3-year sentences, while the primary aggressor, who had tried to strip Lin, was sentenced to 7 years. His female accomplice, though only blocking the exit, received 3 years as well, and all 6 had their illegal earnings confiscated. It seemed even fate itself had been thwarted twice in a row. Who, then, was the real master of fate? The will of Blue Star, sensing more and more anomalies, was furious. Its plans disrupted repeatedly by these beings of its own planet left it seething. It couldn't stay calm. The increasing presence of these anomalies indicated that more individuals with heightened powers were experiencing their side effects. Some people had turned into wood, others lost all their blood, and still others became twisted, monstrous beings. Numerous labs tried suppressing them with weapons, but conventional tools proved useless. Only those with power levels could deal with others whose abilities had mutated. This was a hidden reality, concealed from the public. In the campus medical center, the 4 had no idea how long the rain would last. The doctor hadn't returned, and Lin Youzi didn't dare leave either. But the 4 bag was nearly empty. If it runs dry, will it start sucking my blood back up? Lin wasn't exactly knowledgeable about medical matters and felt a bit uneasy. The oldest roommate noticed the nearly empty 4 bottle, too. "Is the doctor not back?" "He went out, but I'm not sure where," Lin replied, still sitting quietly. The second roommate frowned. With barely half an hour of 4 fluid left, the doctor needed to return soon. The doctor did want to hurry back. However, caught in the heavy rain, he was busy helping some students set up umbrellas as makeshift rain shelters. By the time he'd finished, he was half soaked, and after a brief rest, he grabbed an umbrella and rushed back. He knew the 4 situation was urgent. As soon as he finished up, he headed back to the medical center. Drip, drip, drip. The 4 of them watched the 4 bottle, its contents steadily dwindling. With the 4 fluid about to run out, Lin placed his hand near the needle, considering removing it. But he hesitated, worried about blood spurting out if he pulled it wrong. Right now, he was just an ordinary person, weak and sick. What if he bled out? Lost in anxious thoughts, he began to feel flustered. "Don't move," a voice interrupted. Just in time, the doctor had returned. He swiftly adjusted the 4 setup and replaced the empty bottle with a fresh one. "This isn't something you can just pull out yourself. If you do, your hand could swell up." "What do you mean?" The doctor explained patiently, and the 4 of them listened intently. They learned that there was indeed a science to handling in 4. If the needle isn't removed promptly after the fluid runs out, the pressure imbalance can cause blood to flow back into the 4 line. Although rare, it's a possibility, a phenomenon known as backflow. Additionally, if the needle isn't removed, even without backflow, blood could clot over time, eventually clogging the needle entirely. In the most severe cases, air could enter the bloodstream, causing a dangerous embolism. Anyone who's had blood drawn would know that after the needle is removed, applying a cotton swab for a few minutes is typically sufficient. But if pressure isn't applied, bruising or bleeding around the puncture site can occur. A simple needle poke really has a lot to it. With a new 4 bottle in place, the wait continued, another hour ahead. The 3 roommates, bored, started playing games. Meanwhile, the doctor returned in fresh clothes, holding the leave form he had just picked up. "Lin, here's your leave form. I got it from the administration office. Just hold on to it, and mark it for a 1-month leave." Lin hadn't said anything yet, but his 3 friends were already shocked. "Isn't that form only supposed to be available if you're in the tournament?" "Oh, so you're all martial arts majors? Competing in the martial arts tournament?" "Yes." "Well, think about it, most martial arts students are competing. Would we expect Lin to attend class alone?" The doctor chuckled, seeing their confused faces, and added, "All your teachers have signed up to compete as well. It's not just for students. So, for the next 4 months, martial arts classes are completely flexible." "Wow, that's amazing." The trio was impressed. They had lined up since 7 a.m. that morning and only received their forms around 10 a.m., then ate lunch before heading back to the dorm to find Lin missing. That's when the dorm group chat exchange happened. Seeing their envy, the doctor clarified, "Don't think it's all that great. Your leave is for participating in the tournament, but Lin's is for medical reasons, which is a different matter entirely. For tournament participants, the leave covers a full 4 months. They're required to report their progress after each round, and if eliminated, they have to check in. In contrast, a medical leave is only 1 month, after which a new form is needed. Otherwise, it's marked as unexcused." With the explanation, the trio understood. Finally, Lin spoke up. "Thank you, doctor. It wasn't exactly the leave he had in mind, but it would suffice. Once his sacred water blessing had cooled down, he could still join the tournament." The doctor nodded. "No problem, just keep the form safe." "Oh, doctor, how much longer do I need this for?" "You're done after this bottle." "Got it. When you get back, make sure to stay warm, cover up at night, and don't set the air conditioner too low." "I know." Lin wanted to explain that it wasn't his fault he hadn't covered himself, but he held back. After all, he'd be fine by tomorrow. One of his friends chimed in quickly, "Doctor, we're Lin's classmates. We came as soon as we heard he was sick." "All right, feel free to chat, just call if you need anything." The doctor stepped back into his office. As soon as he left, the 3 friends turned to Lin with mischievous smiles. "Kicking off the blanket while sleeping. Come on. Who does that at his age? So cute." Seeing their expressions, Lin knew they were drawing their own conclusions. He had no idea why fate was so focused on him. If it was trying to mess with him, why not influence them instead? If fate could speak, it would likely yell right in his ear. It has influenced them. But these 3 blockheads are so enamored with your looks, they just keep thinking you should be a girl. It's most dangerous interference so far. Sending Lin to the surgery in the first place. So, it wasn't that fate lacked power, it simply couldn't influence Lin Youzi effectively without finding someone inherently dark-hearted, twisted in worldview, or already harboring ill will against him. Fate could only amplify desires that already existed. Imagine if someone's greatest desire was to fly up and touch the sun. That would only frustrate fate itself. Blue Star's will, resorting to weather manipulation to try and affect Lin Youzi, was left with few options. Its mission was to eliminate anomalies. But as these anomalies increased, the weather grew more unpredictable. The downpour was heavy and lasted for hours. Yet, the rain couldn't dampen the spirits of the students. They were excited to request leave with their tournament passes in hand and eagerly anticipated the competition tomorrow. The whole day was theirs to rest and mentally prepare. After all, getting knocked out in the first round would be embarrassing. At some point, the rain finally stopped, and evening settled in. It was dinner time. Tonight's cafeteria spread was exceptionally abundant. The trucks they'd noticed earlier were delivering supplies for tonight's feast: chicken, duck, fish, you name it. The trio ordered a massive spread, rented a table, and paid for a food delivery to bring it all to the entrance of the campus medical center. Though Lin was no longer hooked up to N4, he was still too weak to walk far. They figured it would be best for him to eat first and head back to the dorm afterward. This arrangement created an unusual scene. With the medical center's lights illuminating the outdoor area, they set up a hot pot. After the rain, the air had cooled, so a warm meal was just right. The cafeteria staff would even handle cleanup afterward. Try some duck gizzards and intestines, the oldest suggested, opening a box of braised offal with duck intestines, chicken hearts, and gizzards. The hot pot broth was mild, split between a corn and beef ball base on one side and a pork lung and goji leaf base on the other. Both were delicious. They boiled thinly sliced beef in the broth, resting it on a ladle as it cooked, and added some hanging dragon to the pot. The third roommate kept busy, cooking the food, adding vegetables to balance the flavors, and refilling the water as needed. Quiet but efficient, he did an impressive job. The meal was full of laughter and warmth. As they walked back to the dorm afterward, Lin realized he felt significantly better, likely thanks to the hot pot. Since he was sick, his friends had been particularly attentive, using serving chopsticks to put freshly cooked food in his bowl before he could even reach for it. If he hadn't insisted he'd had enough, they would have piled his bowl with every dish on the table. The doctor had also joined them halfway through the meal, after returning from removing Lin's 4 earlier. All in all, it was a satisfying end to the day. The cafeteria staff handled the cleanup, and the doctor made sure everything was properly tidied up. Back at the dorm. Once they returned, the trio reminded Lin to get some rest. They excitedly asked him to cheer them on during tomorrow's tournament livestream. "Don't worry, I will," Lin replied with a smile. But he wouldn't be watching from the dorm, he planned to be there in person to compete. After entering his room, he ignored the doctor's advice and went to take a shower. People often say you shouldn't shower with a cold or fever, but it's really about being cautious to avoid a chill that could worsen symptoms. For him, though, it wasn't a concern. His passive ability, Sacred Water's Blessing, was nearly ready to activate. With this passive skill, he could be as indulgent as he wanted and take that shower. Afterward, he didn't bother bundling up either. Dressed in a loose robe, his long legs peeked out in the fluorescent light, giving a glimpse of his graceful figure. "No matter how good-looking I am, it's still just me," he sighed, feeling a bit resigned as he patiently dried his hair. Once it was completely dry, he lay down, closed his eyes, and drifted off to sleep. His nose was still a bit blocked, making breathing uncomfortable. But in the middle of the night, his passive ability triggered. The seal on his abilities lifted, and his full strength returned. His nose cleared up, and his breathing steadied. Outside, by the lake at one university, bullfrogs croaked in the night as security guards patrolled, vigilant against anyone seeking nighttime thrills. Wan City's commercial center. Throughout the night, staff set up 16 event zones, moving competition weapons into the preparation areas. The rest zones and audience seating were stocked with essentials, food and water were must-haves, and hundreds of temporary metal toilets had been installed. Wan City's commercial center could accommodate hundreds of thousands. The large crowd would be divided among 16 sections, yet each zone would still hold a substantial number of people. In the coming days, street vendors would also arrive, adding to the lively scene. This period was a test for police and management agencies on a national level. Any incident would immediately draw nationwide attention, which was not always beneficial. High-profile issues could trigger top-level investigations, and every public agency was acutely aware of this pressure. Corruption was particularly risky during these 4 months, as any scandals could lead to severe consequences. A brief look back at the major events of the past week. October 1st. Morning. Lin Youzi acquired his bow and arrows and departed for the western region to investigate Lolan. That same day, the Ministry of Mineral Resources announced the discovery of a significant rare earth deposit, with reserves several times larger than existing mines. These resources, essential for semiconductor production, were presented as a National Day gift. During the National Day parade, Yu displayed a newly manufactured J-20 fighter, signifying a new model built in the year 3020. An array of advanced weaponry followed, and the South Heaven Gate space station project was confirmed as real. Aerial battleships made their debut in the skies, accompanied by a formation of vertical takeoff fighter jets. October 2nd. Huayu began development of its new rare earth mines, with orders pouring in and prices dropping to 200,000 per ton in the rare earth market. Yesterday, an export restriction on rare earth materials was enacted, targeting several nations. On this day, Lin Youzi arrived in the western region. October 3rd. Lin Youzi encountered a crisis in Lolan. Globally, tensions grew as new, savior organizations emerged in Central Blue Star, spreading apocalyptic and messianic beliefs and inciting mass panic. The central regions deployed troops to quell the unrest, sparking conflict. October 4th. A mythical Shenlong appeared in Lolan. The rare earth market stabilized, and Huayu's rare earth deposits now accounted for 90% of Blue Star's supply. The South Heaven Gate project disclosed that its space fleet was meant for alien threat defense. During the parade, a mysterious military commander whom Lin had seen before made an appearance. Seated among top officials, he was revealed to be a 5-star general. October 5th. This day was a mystery. All electronic devices in Lolan experienced a complete time freeze, causing permanent internal damage to components, yet they continued functioning, just unable to return to real time. Scientists are still investigating this phenomenon, and all events in Lolan have been classified as top secret, S-class. Lin received a kiss from the Queen of Lolan, gaining his first passive ability. October 6th. Returning to campus, Lin restocked his arrows but later endured the cafeteria spill incident. That evening, he developed an illness as strange changes appeared on the petals of his mark. Meanwhile, small skirmishes broke out internationally as religious groups seized lands. News of power levelers began circulating among global leaders, and certain labs started capturing these individuals to gain early control over critical Mystic Realm online resources. October 7th. The day before the martial arts tournament. Wuhan University opened its campus to the public to boost its image and mitigate recent negative press. Lin, weak but determined to secure his tournament pass, headed to the administration office, only to face long lines. Resting in a pavilion, he narrowly escaped an assault. And now, it was October 8th, today. Early morning. Lin's 3 roommates set out early, each assigned to a different competition zone, zones 1, 3, and 5, each round lasted 2 hours, with the first starting at 9 a.m. and ending at 11 a.m. The afternoon round ran from 3 to 5 p.m., and the evening round from 7 to 9 p.m. The surge in participants this year was unprecedented, with over 300,000 registered from Wuhan University alone, nearly double the previous year's numbers, which meant adding an extra time slot to the schedule. The Bitter Gourd trio was scheduled for the 9 a.m. slot, so they left the dorm at 7 a.m., heading to the Wuhan City Commercial Center, where all drivers were providing free rides for tournament participants. The atmosphere was comparable to a national college entrance exam, underscoring the event's importance. Lin awoke just as his roommates were leaving, feeling reinvigorated as his strength and focus returned completely. His match wasn't until 7 p.m., giving him plenty of time. He decided to put together a unique outfit to conceal his identity. Since this was a martial arts tournament, he wanted a look that would convey a mysterious, masterly aura. So, he bought a straw raincoat, a veiled bamboo hat, a traditional martial arts uniform, and a watercolor mask for his face. He completed the look with hand-stitched cloth shoes. The result was pure martial arts elegance. "Come, young hero, draw your sword," he muttered in a half-serious, half-amused voice before laughing at himself. After admiring the outfit, he changed back into regular clothes and sat down at his computer, opening the live stream page for Wuhan City Media. The broadcast had already begun, and many people were watching. 9 a.m. The tournament begins. Wuhan City Commercial Center, Zone 1. In Zone 1, Jiang Yongji, also known as Oldest, stood in the preparation area, buzzing with excitement. He had chosen a staff as his weapon. Among all the wooden weapons available, the staff was the least affected by wear and tear. Over the past week, his father had revealed some family history. Their ancestors once held the title of Martial Alliance leader. One particularly famous ancestor, a powerful martial artist named Jiang Yuyan, was rumored to have single-handedly challenged the entire martial world. In fact, her strength had been so great that she'd inadvertently toppled her family's leadership status. But, as Jiang Yongji liked to joke, he'd seen the legend of Jiang Yuyan on TV. The story was likely just an embellished tale by their ancestors, trying to tie themselves to a famous name. After all, he'd chosen the staff, not some mystical martial arts move. Today, he was determined to make an impression. Gripping his 2-meter staff, he scanned for the cameras. Competitors, to the stage, the referee's call rang out. With that, the matches began. Observing the fights. Meanwhile, Lin Youzi watched from afar as the tournament began. He quickly noticed a trend: the fights were chaotic, with participants flailing around with no technique, aiming only to hit sensitive areas. The strict rules limited their options, and their fighting style reflected it. After a few minutes, he realized that the early rounds were mostly filled with amateur fighters and untrained enthusiasts. It wouldn't get interesting until after a few rounds of eliminations had filtered out the weaker competitors. Tournament organizers. Among the organizers, the president of the Wan City Martial Arts Association sat alongside other official figures. With years of experience, they knew that today's matches would lack excitement, with one exception: Lin Youzi was dominating Zone 1. In less than an hour, he had knocked every opponent off the stage. The referee approached him for an interview and asked, "Martial artist, may I ask what brought you here today?" "For honor," he replied, still catching his breath. "What made you choose the staff as your weapon instead of a sword or blade?" "My family has a history with the staff, so it felt natural for me to use it." The referee nodded, understanding. Many of today's competitors are beginners. A bit of skill and luck can go a long way on the first day. Zhang's breath quickened as he looked into the camera, clearly excited. "Lin Youzi, are you watching? I know you're watching. Cheer for me. And take care of yourself while you're sick." The referee, amused, chimed in, "It seems our martial artist has dedicated his performance to a friend or family member. I'm sure they're watching closely." "Yes, Shaolin is definitely watching," Zhang nodded firmly. But Shaolin wasn't watching. Lin was busy perfecting his look. With the straw raincoat, hat, and cloth shoes, he had the appearance he wanted. When it came to weapons, he considered using a fishing rod. He wasn't proficient with knives or spears, so why not choose something that matched his style? Unfortunately, none of the images of available weapons at the tournament included a fishing rod, only the standard martial weapons. If he had to face one of the previous champions, who was known for his flashy hair care commercials and for making anything from brooms to benches into weapons, he knew he'd have a tough time surviving without a serious weapon. Still, he was content with his outfit, embodying a mysterious, martial style that he hoped would make an impression. Morning matches conclude. The morning matches wrapped up swiftly, with all 3 members of the Bitter Gourd trio advancing to the next round. Lin Youzi, oldest, had been the only one to knock every opponent off the stage. The others simply endured the 2-hour timer until fewer than 30 competitors were left standing. This result aligned well with the expectations of the Wan City Martial Arts Association president, who watched from the organizer's booth. After the referee announced the end of the morning round, the competitors received a well-deserved break until the afternoon matches. The trio decided to stay at the bustling Wan City Commercial Center rather than return to campus. The martial arts tournament had drawn crowds of visitors, including self-media influencers, to document and promote the event. Wan City, with its rich martial culture, was a natural setting for the finals, and its popularity attracted a diverse crowd. Afternoon at the martial arts tournament. When Lin Youzi arrived in the afternoon, he quickly realized that, although his outfit was somewhat unusual, it wasn't as unique as he'd thought. Many competitors wore eccentric costumes. One of the most eye-catching participants stood in front of him, a man in a bright green bodysuit, sporting a perfectly trimmed, watermelon haircut, and flashing gleaming white teeth. The man's style was made even more memorable by the fact that there were 3 of them, dressed identically: grandfather, father, and son. As he listened to them talk, Lin learned that this trio had a family tradition rooted in the martial art they called 8 Gates escape technique. However, as the story went, none of them had ever fully mastered it. They returned to the tournament year after year, hoping to break into the top 5, though they'd never managed to do so. This is starting to feel a bit surreal, Lin thought, silently recognizing the name of their technique as something usually seen in ancient lore. But considering that Huayu's 8 Gates were the authentic origin, he wondered if maybe there was some truth to it. As he ventured deeper into the event, Lin encountered even stranger participants, making his straw raincoat and bamboo hat look almost ordinary. Among the crowd, he spotted Deadpool, Spider-Man, Batman, Pigman, Pancake Hero, Green Hat Hero, Peach Blossom Hero, and even Ultraman. This martial arts tournament had evidently turned into something of a cosplay convention. All right, first time and last time, Lin muttered to himself. No big deal. Afternoon matches. Lin watched the afternoon matches in person. Like in the morning, the bouts were chaotic, with most participants swinging wildly. One competitor, a so-called Master Ma, entered the ring with flashy moves, a left jab, a right roundhouse kick, and a sudden front kick. Grinning, he punctuated each move with feigned surprise attacks and underhanded tactics. Master Ma's signature move, the 5 lightning whips, was a series of rapid strikes that were supposedly the pride of his school. And as the head of his martial arts sect, he was somewhat skilled, managing to last the full 2 hours. After winning, he bowed with a smile to the camera and announced, "If any of you want to be as strong as me, join Mixed Intent Tai Chi School. During this promotion, I'll give you a 30% discount." Most spectators took it all as light-hearted entertainment, and Master Ma's performance quickly became an online sensation. Evening matches begin. As night fell, the lights of Wan City Commercial Center illuminated the area, transforming it into a dazzling scene like a city that never sleeps. The 7 p.m. round began, and Lin made his way to the preparation area to select his weapon. Lin Youzi entered the 16th zone with a unique look that immediately drew the crowd's attention. At his waist hung 2 short blades, and on his back was a long spear, longer than his own height. He was the first competitor to carry 2 distinct weapons, sparking a mix of admiration and controversy. "Smart move by the raincoat guy," someone in the audience muttered. 2 weapons means he can adapt to his opponent's style. That's unfair. What about those of us who stuck to 1 weapon? But the event organizers, aware of the buzz, made an announcement to clarify. The competitor's choice to carry multiple weapons is within the rules. Participants are free to bring 2, 3, even 4 weapons if they can manage them. The point was clear: more weapons didn't necessarily mean an advantage. Mastery of even a single weapon could take a lifetime. Attempting to master multiple styles required extraordinary talent or a level of dedication beyond reach for most. The Wan City Martial Arts Association president, observing Lin's setup, wondered if he genuinely mastered these weapons or was simply exploiting a loophole. 7 p.m., the bell rings. The tournament began. In Zone 1, a masked woman with no visible weapon caused an uproar. Her raw strength shocked everyone. In less than 10 minutes, she had thrown all 200 opponents off the stage, literally tossing them out as if they were mere toys. Viewers quickly dubbed her the Valkyrie, a name she hadn't expected to reclaim in this lifetime. As she left the arena, she murmured under her breath, "Lin Youzi. I know you're here. You can't hide. I'll find you." Witnessing this powerhouse's performance, Jiang Yongji felt a chill. Could someone really toss around 200-pound opponents as if they were nothing? It shook his understanding of what was possible. In Zone 3, another shocking scene unfolded. An elderly man, dressed like a typical park-goer in a practice suit, wielded a blade with deadly efficiency. In less than half an hour, he had single-handedly slashed his way through every opponent, even defeating a former top 100 competitor from last year's tournament. "What kind of monsters have signed up for this year's tournament?" gasped Lin's friend in Zone 3. With such fierce competitors, the tournament's atmosphere peaked as night fell. The commercial center buzzed with excitement, the cheers of the crowd roaring like waves. Lin should be fine too, Jiang Yongji thought, hoping his friend would eventually face a worthy opponent. Though, it's a shame there are no bows in the weapon selection. In Zone 16. Standing near the edge of the stage, Lin nearly stumbled off at one point. Some competitors, seeing his position, thought he'd be an easy target and charged toward him in a crowd. But this was exactly the situation he liked best. When someone lunged, he sidestepped. When attacked, he caught their wrists and used their momentum to toss them off the stage. Within minutes, he had eliminated over a dozen opponents, forcing the rest to smarten up and retreat to the corners, eyeing each other suspiciously. The scene grew oddly tense, with everyone standing still, watching one another, waiting. Well, that's no fun, Lin thought. He decided to make the first move. As he advanced, the crowd backed away. When he picked up speed, so did they. Soon, Lin was chasing down the entire group, creating the absurd spectacle of one man pursuing a crowd of nearly 100. The commentators were stunned. What's going on here? There are almost 100 of you, why are you all running from one guy? Come on, really, fight back. Everyone was frightened by Lin Youzi's presence, as if they'd collectively lost their minds, unable to put up a real fight or even think rationally. It was like a cat-and-mouse game. He was the big cat, chasing down a crowd of little mice. Gradually, Zone 16's competition shifted from a martial arts duel into a game of pursuit, with some contestants attempting lure-and ambush tactics. One competitor, thinking he could trip Lin Youzi, suddenly found himself outmatched. Lin Youzi leapt over his head, grabbed his shoulders, and tossed him out of the ring like a sandbag. The men flew far and landed outside the arena, yelling in pain as medics rushed in to carry him off. This sight only fueled the remaining contestants' fear, sending them scrambling in all directions. 2 hours later, the match finally ended. For many of the less dedicated contestants, this had been their entire year's worth of exercise. When the referee called the match, the exhausted participants hobbled off, legs wobbly and drained. The commentators were at a loss for words, they had no idea how to sum up what they'd just witnessed. Zone 16 had turned into a joke, setting a chaotic tone for the rest of the tournament. One of the commentators asked the referee what would happen with this result. The referee, uncertain, passed the question up to the organizers. The tournament director replied that in these preliminary rounds, every type of contestant would be weeded out. If someone could avoid capture for 2 hours and last until the end of the match, that in itself was a kind of skill. The tournament came to a close for the day, with several standout competitors gaining attention. Some bookmakers set up odds for spectators to bet on the next rounds. Among the favorites was Jiang Yongji, a skilled staff wielder nicknamed Staff Bro, with odds offered on how many matches he'd win. Odds were set at 110 for a clean sweep, 1:5 for winning 5 or more matches, and 1:3 for winning at least 3. Other contenders, like Valkyrie, Park Grandpa, and Traveler in Straw Raincoat, had low odds since it was common knowledge that their chances of losing were practically zero. Their odds reflected this, 1:5 for a clean sweep, and 1:3 for winning at least 5 matches. However, for the next match, the odds for any of them to lose were set incredibly high at 1:100, since the house knew these 3 were almost guaranteed to win. While Lin Youzi was browsing through Wancheng's commercial center, he was approached by a few gamblers. "Brother, could you lose the next match?" "Why?" The gamblers explained, saying they'd taken on loans, were deep in debt, and hoped to make it all back with a one-time bet at 100x odds. But Lin Youzi immediately sensed there was more to the story, and his tone grew cold. "You'd better be honest with me. I'm not that easily fooled. Brother, here's the truth. We maxed out our credit cards out of vanity, racking up over 200,000 in debt, and thought we'd gamble to win it back. Instead, we just sank deeper. How much do you owe now?" 3 million. "Brother, if you don't help us, we're done for." "Oh. And where'd you get the money for this latest bet?" "I took a high-interest loan and borrowed 200,000. If we win, we'll pay it all back." With that, Lin Youzi understood perfectly. These people hadn't learned a thing, they were still clinging to gambling as a way out. Now they thought they could guilt-trip him into going along with it. He was someone who'd already died once in Maze World Online, and his outlook was self-preserving and pragmatic. There was no way he'd abandon his own plans for their mess. "Get lost and stop following me." Whether these people lived or died had nothing to do with Lin Youzi. To him, they were just lowlifes. When Maze World Online finally descended, these types would be the first to die on day one. Driven by vanity and dreams of getting rich through gambling, they were beyond saving. Letting go of any notion of helping, Lin Youzi chose to respect the paths these people had set for themselves. He barked at them to back off, then turned and walked away. But the look in their eyes darkened. "What do we do now?" He said no. "Try one more time. If he still refuses, we'll just take him out. If he's dead, he'll definitely lose." "Good point." The group chased after him again, blocking his path. "Brother, we can give you some money. How about we split the winnings if you let us do this?" "Not interested. Do you really think I'd throw a match for such a small amount?" The gamblers clearly underestimated the integrity of a true martial artist. The sarcasm in his voice stung, and they knew it was well-deserved. They were gamblers, the kind no one respected. So, grinning as if to cover their humiliation, they closed in. But as soon as Lin Youzi took a few steps, they revealed their true colors, pulling out fruit knives and lunging at him. Damn it, you wouldn't help us, so now you die. Wanqing's commercial center was bustling with people. Initially, the bystanders assumed these were just fans of the straw raincoat traveler and kept their distance, recording from afar. But the sight of a knife instantly changed the mood, and a crowd rushed forward, disregarding the danger, eager to subdue the attackers. To a martial artist, standing up for justice was a core belief. And while it wasn't exactly polite to say, many martial artists secretly hoped for situations like this where they could step in as heroes. Before anyone else could intervene, however, Lin Youzi had already made his move. It was as if he had eyes in the back of his head, dodging their strikes effortlessly. Each precise palm strike, each elbow jab, delivered sharp pain that left his attackers doubled over. He used only a fraction of his yellow-level power, enough to lay them up for 10 days at least. A full-force blow would have shattered stone. When one of the men lunged at him with a knife, Lin Youzi sidestepped, tripping him before he could react. He wrested the knife from his hand and pinned him down with one knee, holding the knife tipped dangerously close to the man's eye. Don't move. One more twitch, and you're going to be blind. The gambler, pinned down and wincing in pain, was frozen with fear, gritting his teeth with terror in his eyes. Are martial artists really this powerful? Meanwhile, the other gamblers tried to rally for another attack, but by then, a group of martial artists had arrived. They moved in and forcibly subdued the gamblers, pressing their faces into the ground. When the police arrived, Lin Youzi finally stood up, dropped the fruit knife, and walked away. Dealing with these incompetent gamblers had taken less than a minute. Just as he was leaving, one of the gamblers, lying dazed on the ground, suddenly sprang up. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a handful of powder and hurled it at Lin Youzi with a loud yell. It was lime powder. The martial artists nearby didn't have time to react, their eyes burned and watered, making it impossible to keep them open. Seizing the opportunity, the rest of the gamblers also pulled out lime powder and started flinging it everywhere. We walked right into it. Their real target was us martial artists. Ah, my eyes. My eyes. Seeing the chaos from a distance, one of the police officers quickly began evacuating the crowd and, undeterred by the danger, charged forward. The gamblers had completely lost their minds. Casinos are filled with shady characters, you never know what kind of people you'll encounter. Fortunately, Lin Youzi had already walked a short distance away. Otherwise, his eyes would have been hit directly by the lime powder. As it was, he was still close enough to feel some irritation, with a burning sensation and tears streaming down, making it difficult to keep his eyes fully open. When trouble struck, his first thought was, "Really, heavens. Are you stirring things up again? Can't you give it a rest?" Lin Youzi was at a loss. He couldn't exactly fight the heavens, they were too far out of his reach. The best he could do was express his frustration with a silent gesture to the sky. The gamblers were soon subdued and taken away for questioning, while the injured martial artists were quickly sent to the hospital for treatment. One exception, though, was a martial artist who chose to wait it out, hoping his holy water protection passive skill would kick in soon. It was due to refresh in a few hours, so he figured it would save him a trip to the hospital. Right now, he could only squint, feeling a mild burning around his eyes. Luckily, there was no match tomorrow, so he decided he'd just head back to the dorm and rest up. Originally, Wuhan University in Wanqing had planned a freshman speech on National Day, October 7th. But due to a few incidents, the cafeteria food fight, and the lakeside scandal, the event had been delayed. With the martial arts tournament underway, the speech had been postponed yet again, now set for the end of the month, about 20 days later. Why bring this up? Because the head of academic affairs had actually been looking for Lin Youzi on October 8th, the day he participated in the match. The doctors had insisted that Lin was unwell, so where had he vanished to? Worried that he'd wandered off, the director had stationed himself at the school gate, waiting. Meanwhile, Lin Youzi had just gotten out of a taxi, changed into fresh clothes, and was squinting as he approached the campus entrance. Lin. The director, with sharp eyes, spotted him and walked over, initially intending to inform him about the rescheduled freshman speech. But upon noticing Lin's discomfort, his tone shifted to one of concern. Are you all right? You're supposed to be sick, why are you out and about? It's fine. The martial arts tournament just started, and I was curious. I understand your curiosity, but you should prioritize your health. This tournament is held every year, there's no rush to participate. Resting up is far more important. I know, sir. Lin Youzi could sense the director's genuine concern, though he couldn't help wondering why the director was waiting out here. Sir, are you waiting for someone? Yes, actually, I'm waiting for you. Me. Now it was Lin's turn to be puzzled. Why would he be waiting for him? The director began explaining the reason. After listening, Lin understood. A freshman speech, no problem. But as for the rumors about him needing a kidney transplant. Sir, I'm fine with giving the speech, but I do have a few conditions. Name them. I'd like to request a leave of absence. Lin produced his tournament registration slip. Seeing the slip, the director felt dizzy. His voice rose in shock. Lin, are you out of your mind? You're unwell, and yet you're entering a tournament. But I already signed up, and I even won today. That was just luck. Luck or not, I won. If I skip the tournament now, I'll regret it. In the end, the director, seeing the determination in Lin's face, reluctantly relented. Fine, I'll grant you leave. Thank you, sir. I'll be there for the freshman speech, but I'll need a slight disguise. Is that acceptable? That's fine, as long as you show up. Deal. And with that, the matter was settled. The freshman speech wasn't a big deal to Lin. He already had a plan to handle it. After all, he hadn't actually undergone any kidney surgery. However, thinking about Shurifang searching all over for him made Lin Youzi consider a bold move, revealing his identity. During the freshman speech, he'd planned to hide in plain sight and tell the story of his adventures, enough to make Shurifang stop looking for him once and for all. Smart, very smart, it was a perfect plan. Director, if that's all, I'll head back now. Yes, go rest up. Getting sick and still competing, you're really not worried, are you? The director encouraged him to hurry home, genuinely concerned that Lin might collapse right in front of him. Lin Youzi, though dizzy, wasn't at his limit. But the irritation in his eyes made it hard to keep them open, and he staggered down the path like someone who'd had too much to drink. The director's eye twitched at the sight. Just how bad was this cold and fever that it had him walking like this? Had he not known from their earlier conversation that Lin's mind was clear enough to negotiate his leave, he'd have carried him back to the dorm himself. Instead, he chose to walk alongside him, only leaving once he saw Lin safely inside. In the dorm. Lin Youzi soon realized he could barely see at all. The lime powder's effects were intense, his eyes felt searing hot, too painful to open fully. His passive, holy water protection skill would refresh in just over an hour, so he had to manage until then. In the darkness, he carefully made his way to his room. Experiencing the world as a blind man, he took each step with extreme caution. It felt as though his passive skill was almost working against him. Whenever his body suffered any status ailment, his strength was sealed. Was this the Queen's doing, or something else? He couldn't figure it out. Finally, after what felt like ages, a soothing blue wave passed over him. The burning around his eyes faded, replaced by a pleasant coolness, and a shimmering blue shield appeared around him. A 24-hour countdown started. It was already 11 p.m. Sigh. Might as well take a shower. He wanted to say something more, but no words came to mind. Inside the protection of the shield, warm water cascaded down his body from the shower, flowing over his skin and relaxing his muscles. In the skies over Shiyu. The Queen suddenly opened her eyes. Her sacred, holy water orb had just turned pink. Was the orb blushing? What was going on? The holy water orb, after all, possessed intelligence. In years to come, it would even take human form as a young girl. She would eventually explain that it was Lin Youzi's skin that drew her in, sparking her desire to transform into a woman with his likeness, the image of a poised, graceful woman. Back in the dorm, Lin Youzi finished his shower and began drying his hair. With no obligations tomorrow, he wondered what he should do with his day. Making money was still on his mind, but opportunities lately had been scarce. That 13 billion yuan plot in East City was still out of reach. How was he ever going to scrape together enough? If he waited until next year's currency shift, it would feel rushed and would add a lot of pressure. Money, money, money. He set down the hairdryer and gazed out the window. The moon hung in the night sky, but it offered him no comfort. There must be some opportunity I'm overlooking. He racked his brain, trying to recall any financial tip he might have forgotten. Maybe, wasn't the liquor sector supposed to decline? No, that would mean losses, not gains. And then there was the price of crude oil, which would fluctuate next month. Maybe he'd just try his luck with a lottery ticket tomorrow. Decision made. Tomorrow, he'd buy a lottery ticket. Time flew by. The next morning, as the sun rose, the door of the small dorm building opened, and the trio finally returned. The previous night had been eventful. The eldest had become the center of attention, attracting numerous people eager to speak with him. It made sense, given the betting on his performance in the tournament. The people who invited him out had placed their bets and wanted to get a read on Jiang Yongji's abilities over a lavish meal, complete with beautiful women to up the atmosphere. Unaccustomed to such situations, the trio found themselves at a loss. Combined with the effects of alcohol, they soon found it difficult to keep their composure. Resorting to the pretend-to-be-drunk trick, they managed to avoid doing anything they'd regret. Their hosts, thankfully, weren't eager to press further, so they dropped the trio off at a hotel before continuing their own party. Slightly tipsy, the three passed out in their hotel room. In the early hours, the youngest awoke, driven by a full bladder, and roused his friends so they could make their way back to campus in a hurry. Not returning to the dorm for a night made them surprisingly anxious, as though they'd been out on some guilty escapade and feared facing an angry spouse back home. Yet, there was no such lady of the house waiting in a men's dorm. Suddenly, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Lin Youzi was coming down, wearing clean white sneakers, beige cargo pants with multiple pockets, and a loose white top. His hair was tied back in a high ponytail, topped with a visor cap, making him look youthful and full of energy. "You three smell like alcohol. Were you drinking?" "Yes." "Oh, went a bit wild, huh? Just remember you have a match tomorrow, try to take it easy." "Understood." "All right, I'll be heading out." No scolding, just casual remarks. This left the three feeling a bit downhearted. Getting scolded would at least show someone cared. But this felt like indifference. Wait, why did they want to be scolded? That made no sense. Realizing their own foolishness, the trio quickly went upstairs to shower and clear their heads. In the shower, thoughts of last night's beautiful scenes made their blood race again. Just this once, one of them thought. But just as he began, an image suddenly flashed in his mind. Don't let desire cloud your mind. Yeah, bro. The mental image jolted them back to reality, and they all returned to their senses, achieving a sort of saintly calm. Outside. Lin Youzi didn't worry too much about his roommates. Whatever they chose to do was their business. During the martial arts tournament, as long as no one got seriously hurt and everything was consensual, it was up to them as adults to handle the consequences. But for today, he had other plans, buying some lottery tickets. Now that was exciting enough. As for relationships, Lin didn't care in the slightest. And no, it had absolutely nothing to do with any so-called physical limitations. Absolutely not. He was a gentleman. Then again, what kind of gentleman daydreamed about having multiple wives after the arrival of Mystic World Online? "Boss, give me a 20 yuan ticket." "They're over there, pick what you like." The lottery shop owner was engrossed in watching the martial arts tournament on the television. Even before the tournament began, there were live broadcasts from Wanqing Media, running around the clock. Countless camera setups covered all 16 tournament zones, with 4 additional feeds focused on popular spots in Wanqing's commercial center. While it was a costly endeavor, it showcased Wanqing's unique charm and wasn't considered a loss. And the martial arts tournament itself generated substantial peripheral revenue, easily reaching billions. As for Lin, he didn't stop at one ticket. He bought an entire booklet of scratch-offs, each one worth 20 yuan, a total of 600 yuan. He sat down and began scratching them off, one by one. Few people bought an entire booklet all at once, so a small crowd gathered to watch, curious to see how much this young lady might win. Everyone loves a bit of excitement. The first ticket? Nothing. The second? 10 yuan. After about 15 minutes, he was down to the last few tickets. Repetitive scratching made his hand ache, but thankfully, he was nearly finished. And so, he continued scratching. All right, the winning number is 7, let's see. First row. Number 7. Until, on the very last row, there it was. A 7. No way. Lin Youzi stood up in shock, holding the ticket up as he walked over to the counter to ask the shop owner. Boss, did I really win 200,000 yuan? Let me check. The owner scanned the ticket at the computer and, sure enough, confirmed it. That's right, you won 200,000. Not bad at all. Whoa. He jumped up in excitement. Winning 200,000 from a lottery felt entirely different from making millions in rare earth investments. With rare earths, he'd known he'd make money, but with the lottery, the surprise and randomness made it far more exhilarating. You want to redeem it now? Asked the shop owner. Just a sec, I still have a few more tickets left. Not caring about how the owner had addressed him, he quickly scratched off the remaining tickets. And then he froze. No way. The amount on one of the tickets left him in disbelief. Boss, can you check this? Of course. The owner checked again and was just as stunned. One ticket showed 500,000 yuan, another had 1 million, and another 2 million. Adding these to the previous 200,000, along with smaller prizes from other tickets, the total winnings were a whopping 3.71 million yuan. The people gathered around could hardly believe their ears. Could this really be happening? But the shop owner was already on the phone with the local press. Just hang tight. Once the reporters get here, we'll snap a quick photo, and then you can head to the bank to redeem your winnings. All right. 3.71 million, what a lucky day. He really had outdone himself this time. Word of the jackpot spread quickly, and people started flooding into the lottery shop, buying tickets and scratching with fervor. Unfortunately, it seemed as though all the luck had been drained by Lin. Some people spent over 600 yuan on a booklet and won only around 1,000, others barely made back 300. Ugh. Frustrated and disappointed, a few losers stomped around, venting their anger. Finally, the reporters arrived, clearing out the crowd. Lin donned a mask to hide his face, hoping to maintain some privacy. With the photo taken, the reporters already had their headline in mind. Today, local resident Ms. Lin wins 3.71 million at a lottery store. Whether Ms. or Mr. Lin didn't care what they called him. After cashing out at the bank, he'd walk away with his prize, minus the taxes deducted on windfall earnings. He even donated a portion to a local welfare charity, which left him with around 1 million yuan. It was more than enough, he understood the importance of being content. With his winnings, he spent the day shopping, enjoying a spree without a care in the world. In his high spirits, he didn't even notice until later, he'd bought women's clothes. When did he even buy those? And had he actually tried them on? Impossible. He was a manly man, a straight-laced guy who would never wear women's clothing. Of course. It had to be some strange influence from the heavens. What a misfortune. But still, he had bought them, so it would feel wrong to throw them away. Staring at the bag, he felt a bit conflicted. He couldn't just waste them, right? And besides, he lived alone. Who would ever find out? So he decided to keep them, not out of preference, of course, but simply to avoid waste. That was all there was to it. The day passed quickly for Lin Youzi as he indulged in shopping, finding the experience surprisingly satisfying. His mind, always on edge, finally felt relaxed. If only the heavens hadn't influenced him to buy women's clothes, it would have been perfect. As the sun set, Lin returned to campus. The streets were bustling with students, and the field was full of clubs recruiting new members and holding activities. Lin glanced over, feeling a brief pang of envy. He was a college student, too. If he didn't know about the impending crisis, he'd also want to enjoy such carefree moments. Sigh. Life is about making choices. Growing up meant constant trade-offs. Carrying his shopping bags, he returned to the small dormitory building. Inside, his 3 roommates were on the first floor, animatedly discussing the day's matches. They seemed especially keen on a certain someone overhearing their conversation. So, as soon as Lin walked in, the eldest roommate raised his voice, boasting about his prowess with the staff and how he had taken down several opponents in one glorious moment. But when he noticed Lin heading upstairs without a word, he couldn't hold back any longer. "Hey, little Lin, you were out all day. What did you get up to?" "Shopping," Lin replied, holding up his bags. The eldest's curiosity was piqued. "What did you buy? Let us see." "Nope." Lin refused, his expression stern as he quickly went up the stairs. Once Lin disappeared, the eldest slumped back onto the couch, muttering in frustration, "Little Lin is so mysterious. He won't even let us see what he bought." "Come on, he's got his secrets," the second roommate said, "like his money-making skills. Could any of us do what he does?" At this, the room fell silent. It wasn't just them, even the second roommate's dad couldn't make over 1 billion yuan in a month. The second continued, "Don't you guys wonder about him?" The other two shook their heads. What was there to wonder about? He could have bought anything, maybe some clothes, maybe something unexpected, like women's clothes or stockings, or even a Fiji cup. Seeing their lack of curiosity, the eldest felt a strange restlessness. It was like a peacock wanting to show off its feathers but finding no audience. He'd wanted to impress Lin with tales of yesterday's victories, but Lin didn't seem interested at all. His attempt to spark curiosity by asking about the shopping bags had failed. Lin had been secretive, refusing to show what he'd bought and disappearing upstairs. The eldest didn't mind his other roommates seeing what he bought. After all, they were men, there wasn't much that could be embarrassing. Unless it was women's clothes. Wait a second. An idea seemed to spark, and the eldest lowered his voice as he looked toward the stairs. "Hey, what if we convinced little Lin to join a club and somehow got him to wear women's clothes during an event?" "That's probably not a good idea," the second roommate replied, frowning. He wasn't sure if this was the best plan. The third roommate's eyes lit up, and he looked like he wanted to agree, but he stayed silent. "You two have no sense of adventure." "All right, forget it." Wait, the second said. "I mean, this needs planning. We'd have to get him into a club willingly and, somehow, get him into women's clothes without him realizing it." "Wow, second, I'm just now seeing your sneaky side," the eldest said, giving him a look as if seeing him for the first time. His gaze seemed to say, "So this is who you really are." Feeling the judgment, the second grew flustered and immediately deflected. "Hey, third's the sneaky one here. I'm just curious, that's all." The third roommate, suddenly accused, quickly defended himself. "What? I'm not sneaky. That's an attack on my character." The second smirked. "Oh, don't think I don't know. Your screensaver is a photo of little Lin." The third roommate, Sun Mingren, was visibly taken aback when his secret was exposed and stepped back in shock. When did you see that?" he stammered, quickly racking his brain to figure out where he had slipped up. He was certain he'd hidden it well. But the second roommate, Suyong-chu, just gave him a triumphant grin. "See? You just admitted it." Realizing he'd been cornered, Sun's mind raced for a comeback. He shot back, "Maybe it's actually your screensaver." Su turned away, coughing awkwardly, caught red-handed. Meanwhile, the eldest, Jiang Yongji, felt his face go dark. These two were seriously strange, using little Lin's photos as screensavers. Good thing he'd only gone as far as making little Lin his wallpaper. Ahem. Wait, weren't they discussing how to get little Lin to wear women's clothes? When did this conversation derail so badly? He steered the topic back on track, and soon enough, the three were deep in discussion, earnestly analyzing the feasibility of their plan. In his room. While his roommates plotted, Lin Youzi had already stashed away the women's clothes, pushing them deep into the back of his wardrobe. The heavens are truly troublesome, he thought. He'd let his mind wander and bought not only clothes but also a pile of accessories. Classic scapegoating, there was no way he'd admit to buying them himself. Clearly, the heavens were at fault here. They'd nudged him, twisted his mind, it was outrageous. Some time later. Fresh from a shower, Lin stepped out, but found his hands, almost as if against his will, reaching toward the wardrobe. Smack. He slapped his hand, stopping himself. Why on earth did he suddenly find his usual men's clothes unappealing and feel like trying on those other clothes? What's going on? I should be back to normal by now. Could it be that the heavens' influence is stronger than I thought, still affecting me? He seriously considered the possibility. After a while, he came up empty-handed and could only push his confusion aside, forcefully suppressing any stray thoughts about those clothes. To distract himself, he sat at his desk, opened his computer, and checked the tournament schedule. He'd won the first preliminary round in Zone 16. For the next round, he'd stay in Zone 16, although the roster would be replenished back to 200 participants. Those who hadn't been eliminated would continue, and new entrants would be added to the pool. With thousands of contestants each day, the tournament allowed for 3 matches per zone daily, with over 3,200 people competing each round. Yet with over 300,000 contestants signed up, the logistics were challenging. Even with continuous matches for 20 days, only 200,000 would get their chance, leaving many participants with buys. But the scheduling algorithm was highly efficient, guaranteeing that everyone who signed up would have a match, though the difficulty might ramp up as rounds progressed. After browsing the trending topics, Lin lay back on his bed, finding his usual men's clothing strangely unappealing. He was currently wearing a loose-fitting bathrobe. Why did he feel this way? Unbeknownst to him, the 7th petal on his internal flower had begun to change color. With one more opportunity, the transformation would complete. Late at night. As the contestants rested up for tomorrow's matches, the Tournament Association's president was still hard at work, crafting weapons. "President," one of the assistants asked, "should we consider allowing martial artists to submit their own specifications for their weapons? That way, we can custom-make them to each person's preferences." Interesting idea. But how do we ensure fairness? Well, President, there's really no way to make the tournament perfectly fair, given everyone's different skills. Allowing customized weapons just introduces a new kind of balance. The president was struck by this suggestion. After a moment of thought, he decided to request approval from the higher-ups. During the martial arts tournament, feedback channels were staffed around the clock. Sure enough, a response came back swiftly. The president opened it and his eyes widened in shock. On the screen, the message read, "After deliberation, the proposal has been approved. It will take effect in the official rounds following the preliminaries. Until then, the current rules remain." The president hadn't expected such quick approval. But, after thinking it over, it made sense. With the arrival of that mysterious new world looming, adding something unique to this final martial arts tournament seemed fitting. When every martial artist can wield a weapon that fits their style perfectly, the matches will definitely be more exciting. This year's number of participants had doubled last year's. Among so many contestants, who knew how many hidden powerhouses there might be? Hopefully, that young friend of ours will achieve good results. After all, this tournament was also a training exercise for the military. They had secretly sent soldiers trained in spiritual cultivation to compete, undergoing training and fighting simultaneously. No one in this tournament could afford to stand still. The next day, October 10th, Double 10 Day. The Bitter Melon Trio had their match early in the morning, leaving the dorm first thing, convinced that little Lin would be watching them on TV. In reality, little Lin was still fast asleep. Lately, his sleep had been haunted by strange dreams, each one ending in his death. Dreaming of death was not a good omen, and it was starting to wear on him. Why was he constantly dreaming of death? Could his rebirth really not change his fate? He refused to believe it. If the chains of fate were real, then he'd break them himself. When he finally woke up, it was already 10 a.m., an hour into the match. Still lying in bed, he picked up his phone to watch the live stream. Wancheng Commercial Center. Zone 1. Jiang Yongji was in trouble. Out of 200 participants, only 2 remained, him and the person in front of him. The opponent wore an oversized, hooded black cloak with a mask covered in strange patterns. Wrapped around his hands was a chain, his chosen weapon. Technically, chains weren't among the allowed weapons, but this masked fighter had defeated so many opponents that he'd managed to link a pair of nunchaku with other weapons to fashion his chain. In the audience, many people were visibly nervous for Jiang Yongji. Their worry wasn't necessarily due to any fondness for him, they'd simply bet on him winning at least 5 matches. If he lost in the second round, the house would take it all. Just hold on. Don't go in yet. The unexpected appearance of this dark horse in black had electrified the crowd. They shouted for Jiang to stall, urging him to last an hour without losing. Only Jiang Yongji himself understood the level of pressure the black-robed fighter was putting on him. He didn't dare make a move with his staff. One misstep, and the staff would be ensnared by the chains and wrenched from his grasp. Losing his weapon would mean immediate defeat. The black-robed figure wasn't in any hurry, speaking in a low, emotionless tone. This world is false. I won't eliminate you. I need you to help me eliminate more people. His voice was icy, and his expression, hidden behind the mask, remained unreadable. Yet on his hand, partly concealed by his sleeve, a chain-shaped tattoo was starting to glow. This man. He was one of the top 1,000 players in Mystic World Online, a powerful cultivator. Blue Star Online profile. Name, Fei 2. Gender, male. Race, human. Cultivation level, Mortal Realm, 7th stage. Ability, Heaven's Prison Chains. Everything connected, passive when the user is unarmed, they can create chain-like weapons. If the opponent's cultivation is lower than theirs, they can disarm the opponent's melee weapon upon direct confrontation. The chain tattoo on Fei 2's hand was halfway lit. Using this passive skill had come at a price. And with that, Zone 1 fell silent. The crowd fell silent too. Everyone was waiting for time to run out. Finally. Time was up. The audience burst into angry shouts. They understood the rules of the martial arts tournament well enough to realize that Jiang Yongji and Fei 2 would meet again in 2 days. This meant they'd lose money. Knowing the situation, the bookmakers quickly set new odds. The odds for the men in the black robe matched those of Valkyrie, Old Man of the Park, and Straw Hat Traveler. The bets were on him losing, not winning. The odds for him to lose in the very next round were set at 100 to 1. Another obvious trap for the gamblers. The organizers were aware of the situation but chose to ignore it. It was an annual occurrence, and they decided to let it run its course. Even if they tried to ban these bets, private wagers would pop up anyway. Better to keep it out in the open, where it could be monitored. Speaking of the betting scene, the investigation results on the recent lime powder attack incident had just been released. The 3 attackers claimed that after losing a bet, they were instructed by someone from the casino on how to carry out their plan, including bringing the lime powder to threaten the martial artist. They couldn't explain why they acted so wildly when they were refused. According to them, their memories went blank after the Straw Hat Traveler turned them down. From that moment, they remembered nothing. It would be up to the police to decide whether they were telling the truth, but regardless, their actions had consequences. Each of them would face punishment and had already been detained. Oddly enough, they seemed happy about it. This way, at least, they wouldn't have to pay off their debts. The morning matches wrapped up. In a tea house on a second-floor balcony, a refined-looking middle-aged man sipped his tea. From his seat, he had a clear view of the commercial street below. If one looked closely, they'd see that this was the same spot where the gamblers had attacked the Straw Hat Traveler. All the plans have failed, he muttered, lifting his teacup and taking a measured sip. On the back of his hand was a coin symbol. He hadn't only targeted the Straw Hat Traveler, everyone with significant odds had been a target. But only Straw Hat Traveler had been successfully hit, since the lime powder had injured his eyes. With that incident, he'd ruled out Straw Hat Traveler as a threat. Anyone weak enough to be hurt by ordinary people couldn't possibly be his kind, and was unlikely to pose any danger. As for Valkyrie, his men hadn't even gotten close to her before being subdued. Clearly, she was one of his kind and would need to be dealt with carefully. The Old Man of the Park was elusive. He vanished without a trace as soon as each match ended. And now, a new player in the form of the black-robed man had appeared. The man took out a gold coin from his pocket, tossing it into the air. Heads. The coin landed on the patterned back of his hand, showing tails. Lucky for you, he murmured. He crushed the coin in his hand, releasing a faint golden glow that merged into the coin symbol on his hand. He swiftly rolled another coin between his fingers and crushed it again. Once he'd completed his moves, he produced yet another coin. Let's see just how lucky you are, black-robed man. He tossed the coin upward, continuing his game. Heads, he said, watching as the coin's symbol matched. Success. As he spoke, the coin dissolved into faint golden light. At that same moment, behind the black-robed men, one of the gamblers suddenly froze, his eyes flashing with a glint of gold. The gambler's eyes flashed with a golden light, his mind overtaken. Under the man's control, the gambler's hand moved to his chest as he approached the black-robed men and muttered, "Brother, can I talk to you for a moment?" "Go on." The black-robed man's voice was cold, his gaze unmoving. But in the next second, the gambler suddenly pulled out a knife and lunged for the black-robed man's hand. The intent was clear, to force the black-robed man to defend himself, revealing whether he had any distinguishing marks on his hand. Seeing this, the black-robed man reacted instantly. A chain slipped from beneath his wide sleeves, snaking out and binding the gambler, shattering the knife upon contact. Then, stepping forward, he used the chain to restrain the gambler completely. To the one behind this, cut out these petty tricks. Hearing this, the man in the tea house paused, withdrawing his control. "Looks like he's one of us," he muttered, rubbing his chin. He slipped on white gloves, placed a gentleman's top hat on his head, and left the tea house. Profile: Qian Wujin. Gender: male. Race: Mystic World Human. Cultivation level: Mortal Realm, 9th stage. Ability: Golden Fortune. Passive skill: Greed for gold, allows him to control people consumed by their desire for money. For control to take effect, the target must have experienced a recent emotional fluctuation, and they must be within 1,000 meters. He can control as many people as he has coins. Active skill: Gamble. By tossing a coin and guessing the outcome correctly, he can remotely control a money-driven individual. Control with this method requires 1 coin per person, and a failed guess leads to a 1-hour cooldown instead of consuming a coin. Active skill: Worth every penny, consumes coins to reduce cooldown times across all skills. Each coin shortens cooldowns by 30 minutes. Active skill: Endless Wealth, grants 1 coin per natural day, with a maximum of 5 coins, this limit increases as his strength grows. The Mystic World Humans are human traders who sold their souls to the Lord of Mystic World to gain power early, avoiding unlocked skills that would draw Blue Planet's attention. The purpose of these Mystic World Humans is to eliminate Blue Planet's emerging cultivators ahead of time. No one knows how many Mystic World Humans exist, and they are not limited to humans. Let's not forget the horses. Valkyrie and black-robed men, we'll see who prevails. Qian Wujin had already used up his coins for the day. Still, he could always cultivate more followers driven by greed, people who would become his future soldiers. He had no intention of participating in the martial arts tournament himself, his true role was to hunt those who did. Meanwhile, Fei too observed the gambler and felt certain that an awakened cultivator had been behind the attack. So he's gained so many abilities already, could it be? He formed a theory, though he couldn't be sure just yet. When he saw the police approaching, he retracted his chain and walked away. With so many witnesses around, they could explain what had happened to the officers. And so, the incident was quickly categorized as a gambler's assault. Since the man was a known gambler, people assumed he had bet on the black-robed men losing the next match and had acted out of desperation. It was remarkably similar to the attack on the Straw Hat Traveler just days prior. Such high-stakes odds, 100-1, drove some people to madness. That afternoon, the tournament continued as usual. This time, a new competitor entered, a towering man, 2.5 meters tall, wearing a rooster mask. His footing was solid, and he used his broad shoulders to shove the other participants off the stage one by one. With each iron shoulder charge, he was unstoppable, bulldozing through anyone in his path. The original move, invented by the hulking competitor, was almost impossible for others to counter. In another match, the green-skinned father-son duo took the stage, working together to defeat numerous opponents. The green bowl-cut hairstyle of the son caught the eye of many, prompting nostalgic remarks from the crowd. Seeing that green bowl-cut brings back memories of my youth. Even McKeon, a 5-star general from the Lighthouse Nation, remarked, "Youth is priceless." Before this, I never truly understood that, until the appearance of 3 generations of green bowl cuts. Evening arrived. It was nearly time for Lin Youzi's match. Meanwhile, over in Valkyrie's match, her fellow contestants shook with fear. The moment the match started, they tried to team up and take her down. Predictably, it was a futile effort. In less than 10 minutes, she'd thrown everyone off the stage. In the face of absolute strength, these little tricks are pointless, she declared, her words dripping with meaning. In the audience, Qian Wujin blinked in surprise before grinning. Truly worthy of being a kindred, each was as proud as the next. His gaze then turned to the old man of the park. As usual, the old man wielded his wooden sword with crushing force, moving from the east side of the ring to the west, then from the south to the north. 200 opponents found themselves pursued and pummeled relentlessly. "Grandpa, please, I'll jump down myself. Take it easy on us, Grandpa, don't break any bones." The wooden sword hurt even with light taps, causing some to yelp in pain with each blow. They couldn't take it any longer and opted to jump off the stage rather than endure the park grandpa's overpowering strikes. Once again, he achieved victory in a landslide. Finally, all eyes turned to Zone 16. The Straw Hat Traveler was set to fight. Just like in the previous match, the Traveler stood calmly near the edge of the stage. However, this time, word about the lime powder incident had spread. "Go on." The Straw Hat Traveler was hurt by lime powder, "Take him down," someone shouted. "Come on, are you men or not?" The stands erupted with cries, voices crashing like waves as the crowd grew excited, their cheers filling the arena. The lure of a big payout had everyone eager to see the Traveler lose. The fighters in the ring, aware of the incident, steeled their resolve. With renewed determination, all 199 fighters advanced on Lin Youzi, moving as if they were one. Some took shameless tactics. Since the Traveler's vision was compromised, they tried to surround him from all sides. A few aimed directly at his lower body, ready to perform judo throws and other grappling techniques. Many had trained in various fighting styles from around the world, including judo axe, Superman punch, and the sacrifice kick. Their movements were unpredictable and posed a genuine threat, relying on feints and misdirection to confuse opponents. But Lin Youzi remained unfazed. With overwhelming strength on his side, he had no need to fear underhanded tactics. As his opponents closed in, he spoke up. "Look, a UFO." His words instantly drew everyone's eyes upward, glancing reflexively behind them. But their minds caught up faster than their bodies. As they began to turn, they realized they'd fallen into a trap. "Damn, we've been tricked." Their heads were still turning when a force struck their necks. Their world spun as they were tossed off the stage, some even twisting their necks in the process. Damn it. No honor. Tricking us with a sneak attack. The UFO tactic had eliminated over a dozen opponents in one move. Taking advantage of the distraction, Lin Youzi had broken out of their encirclement. "Deception is fair game, you're just too foolish." Their fury only grew as they charged at him once more. Lin, however, didn't engage directly, instead leading them in a hit-and-run tactic. The audience's faces were a mix of reactions, and even the commentator fell into silence. Zone 16 might have been small, but it was a place where legends were being made. Zone 16 was odd. 2 days ago, the Straw Hat Traveler had been the one chasing everyone around. But this time, the roles were reversed, now he was the one being chased by the crowd. If it were just that, it might have been understandable given the sheer numbers against him. But, as usual, the Traveler didn't play by the rules. In the middle of being chased, he would suddenly turn around, causing the crowd to come to a panicked halt, expecting him to attack. In the chaos of trying to brace for defense, they'd end up piling into each other, breaking their formation and sending some of them tumbling off the platform. Friend taking down friend. This back and forth kept the numbers dropping fast. Finally, it was the Traveler's turn to start chasing the remaining contestants. "Brother, I'm sorry. Mercy, please. Just let me survive this round. I'm begging you." They ran while pleading, glancing over their shoulders in terror. Lin Youzi was grinning inside but kept a stern face to maintain his image as he pursued them. For another 2 hours, they kept running, until the time ran out. Exhausted, the others collapsed on the ground, panting like Da Huang, the village mutt known for sticking out its tongue to cool down after a long day in the sun. As the clock struck time, the referee appeared to announce the end of the match. Out of all the rounds that day, Zone 16's was undoubtedly the most bizarre. In fact, any match involving the Straw Hat Traveler had a tendency to be downright peculiar. A group of participants even filed a joint protest, demanding a change to the rules. The reason? With winners remaining in their zones, upcoming participants would know in advance who they'd be facing. No one wanted to meet these powerhouses, and the complaints rolled in. The organizers' response was brief and to the point. Protests denied. They did, however, clarify that new rules were being drafted for the official rounds. Until then, they urged everyone to push through to reach the main tournament. Of course, this did nothing to address the immediate issue. Many of them knew they wouldn't make it past the preliminaries. Rather than suffer defeat at the hands of those same powerhouses, many opted to withdraw from the tournament entirely. The organizers didn't mind, the system would automatically adjust to keep the roster full. Every victor was recorded in the back end, and the supercomputers easily managed the reassignments. As a result, the issues that had worried them earlier were resolved naturally. Even if participants didn't withdraw, the president had backup plans ready. If necessary, he could allow top competitors to skip a round to even out numbers or add additional contestants to certain zones. Or, for instance, he could simply increase the capacity of each of the 16 zones. Experience had taught the president the importance of contingency plans, and he was well prepared. With the day's matches over, Qian Wujin was feeling more confident in his assumptions. If the Straw Hat Traveler was truly one of his kind, would he really have fought in such a cowardly manner? Resorting to mind games to scrape through a victory. And that outfit? What kind of person wore a raincoat on a dry day? Clearly, the traveler's sense of style was as questionable as his skills. With that, he crossed the Straw Hat Traveler off his list of potential threats. The old man of the park, on the other hand, was still a suspect. He always sprinted away the moment his match ended, almost as if he knew he was being watched. Such vigilance was no ordinary trait. In truth, the old man wasn't being cautious at all, he simply wanted to get home quickly before anyone discovered he'd been skipping work to join the tournament. With mismatched information, Qian Wujin arrived at his own flawless conclusion. As a mystic world human, Qian Wujin possessed that characteristic air of mysterious confidence. Arrogance was in his nature, and looking down on the people of Blue Star was practically tradition. Fingering his gold coin, he returned to the tea house, choosing his favorite seat with a unique view of the bustling scene below. Meanwhile, to avoid any sneak attacks, Lin Youzi had changed out of his distinctive outfit and stashed it securely in his suitcase. Yes, he'd brought a suitcase with him from the start. Luckily, Wanqing's commercial center had luggage storage points. He rented a spot for 4 months to store his suitcase and even bought 2 extra suitcases as decoys. This meticulous caution was second nature to Lin, and he wasn't about to take any chances. Once changed into casual clothes, he headed off to try some street food, stuffed rice balls imported from Japan. Soft with a texture stickier than cotton candy, the taste was interesting but would be too much in large amounts. Then he tried some takoyaki and fried meatballs. Today's theme was balls. While he was eating, his solo dining drew the attention of a few men looking to make conversation. "Excuse me, miss, are you here alone?" Lin turned to see an older gentleman. "Uncle, I'm a whole person, not half, right?" Lin replied with a smirk. The man was taken aback. "Sharp-tongued, this one." "Ahem, that's not what I meant." "You know what I mean." "Uncle, I don't want to know what you mean, but my meaning, is it clear to you?" "What do you mean?" "Uncle, you're really annoying. Goodbye. No, never see you again." Anyone would be annoyed if their meal was interrupted by some random person making small talk. If it were a good-looking guy, no, a beautiful woman, that'd be a different story. With that, Lin left and wandered into a cooling tea shop. Even in October, the autumn tiger heat was strong, making the night feel a bit stifling. Holding onto his lottery winnings, he shopped to his heart's content, enjoying his spree without a care. After all, there wasn't much on his plate these next few months. Tomorrow, though, he'd planned to bond with his horse again. After 10 days apart, he didn't want the horse to forget him. Feeling great, he hummed softly, almost skipping down the street. He couldn't say why, but he was in a fantastic mood. It must be the heavens again, meddling in my emotions. How irritating. Heavens. The heavens didn't spare Lin Youzi any attention. After all, they'd long figured out that this anomaly was no real threat, a total flake, really. Unlike other regions where the anomalies were particularly dangerous. In Blue Star's central area, strange abilities were surfacing amidst chaotic clashes between various cults. This meant cultivators were involved. The first side effect user had appeared, barely retaining his humanity but with the appearance of a wolf. A true werewolf. The creature fit perfectly with age-old legends of the supernatural. In exchange for rationality, this werewolf had sold his soul to Mystic World and created a werewolf organization, using his abilities to infect ordinary people and turn them as well. With this werewolf army, he seized land aggressively. Of course, there was a catch to this transformation. On the night before each full moon, werewolves would lose all their powers. Effectively, they became walking weather forecasts. Whenever they weakened, you could bet a full moon was just a day away. The werewolves had sold their souls to the Lord of Mystic World in exchange for reason, and now they carried out his task, slaughtering all life on Blue Star. The central region of Blue Star was aflame with war, its skies heavy with smoke that even the rain couldn't wash away. These anomalies, these creatures, roamed openly, showing no fear. Blue Star's will was furious. It unleashed thunderous storms, striking down countless lesser werewolves. Yet the werewolf leader was unbothered by these losses. As long as he remained, he could continue creating more werewolves. The arrival of the Mystic World Lord was near, and he could barely contain his excitement. Unlike Qian Wujin, who preferred to weaken Blue Star by hunting down cultivators, the werewolf aimed to hasten Mystic World's descent by provoking the heavens. He wanted to eliminate any potential threats to the Mystic World Lord and wipe out all power from Blue Star. For without the cultivators, Blue Star would fall into a dark age, making it easy prey for the Mystic World Lord's forces to take over. Back at Wanqing's commercial center, Lin Youzi's presence had drawn quite a few curious stares. His obvious fascination with the bustling scene around him made him a bit of an attraction himself. People came up to strike up a conversation, but Lin rejected every attempt. That is, until he caught the attention of a live streamer. Holding up her phone, she showcased the sights to her viewers. Noticing Lin, she approached and asked, "Miss, are you out here with no makeup?" "Yep," Lin replied coolly. As a guy, he was firmly against wearing any makeup. "Wow, your skin is amazing. What's your skincare routine?" "Just whatever. It's all natural." "Ugh, I'm so jealous," the streamer said, gazing enviously at Lin's flawless face. And she wasn't the only one. Other bystanders were also admiring his fair skin and soft pink lips. Even the viewers in her live stream chat couldn't hide their envy. "Look at this shameless streamer," touching her hand. "No wonder she's called the She-Wolf." The streamer's handle, "Call Me Sashimi," had led fans to affectionately nickname her Sis Sashimi. Sis Sashimi is such a sneak, look at her expression, "Ugh, I'm so jealous. Sashimi's so lucky she's in Wanqing. I'm stuck studying while she's meeting all these beauties." In her live stream, Sis Sashimi couldn't stop showing off, holding up Lin's hand to the camera for everyone to admire. Who can relate? This girl's skin is just perfect, so soft, it feels amazing. And she even has a hint of fragrance. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. Lin, hearing this, pulled his hand away. What a weirdo. "I need to head home," he said, excusing himself. "Don't go. It's not even 10 o'clock, your night's just getting started." "Nope, I'm heading home. Bye." All right, but can we exchange WeChat? Maybe I can invite you out next time. Maybe if we meet again. Bye." Lin had no interest in getting tangled up with another persistent girl. Dealing with Shurifang was headache enough, and adding another clingy person would make his life unbearable. After watching him jog away, Sis Sashimi pouted. "She's so cool and distant, wouldn't even add me. Am I not pretty enough?" To be fair, Sis Sashimi was indeed attractive. She had a round, cute face, a tall, slender figure, and quite a noticeable bust. She chuckled, suddenly remembering a flaw she'd noticed in the beautiful stranger. Sis Sashimi suddenly cheered up with the thought that, at least, she had a fuller chest than the cool beauty she'd just met. In a bright tone, she resumed introducing her viewers to the bustling night market of Wanqing's commercial center. When Sis Sashimi smiles, someone's life hangs in the balance. She's definitely up to her usual cheeky thoughts. Classic Sis Sashimi, either she's being cheeky or thinking about being cheeky. Meanwhile, Lin Youzi had taken a cab back to campus. The moment he walked through the gate, he spotted Shurifang talking with a police officer. She glanced his way for a second before returning to her conversation. What's going on? He wondered. It seemed to be related to the gamblers. Could they have struck again? He was baffled. After all, he'd had his own run-in with them just a couple of days ago. Today, though, he'd been left alone, apart from that oddball streamer. Then it dawned on him. Oh, right. I changed clothes, so they probably didn't recognize me. Little did he know that he, the Straw Hat Traveler, had already been dismissed from Qian Wujin's hit list. A weakling injured by ordinary people. Clearly, he couldn't be one of their kind. As Lin walked past Shurifang, a question struck him. Why were gamblers targeting her? Did she enter the tournament too? Maybe her odds were high enough to draw attention. Intrigued, he slowed his pace to eavesdrop a bit. To his relief, she was only there as a witness. She'd seen Valkyrie fend off a gambler's attack, and her praise was overflowing, practically worshipping Valkyrie's power. Watching Shurifang in fangirl mode gave him pause. Adoring someone who casually throws opponents off the stage. A violent goddess of all things. Don't tell me Shurifang has a violent streak too. Horrified at the idea, Lin quickly walked away. Curiosity had indeed killed the cat. Why did he even stop to listen? Now he was just freaked out. Later that night, Lin lay in bed, feeling reassured now that his passive skill, Sacred Water Protection, had refreshed. With this protection, he didn't need to worry about things like the lime powder incident happening again. Still, he was puzzled. Could ordinary people really be bold enough to attack martial artists over money? Sure, greed could blind people, but they had to know they were overmatched. Did they even think through the consequences? Unable to figure it out, Lin eventually put the thought aside. No one, not even Lin himself, knew about the existence of mystic world humans, who lurked in the shadows with sinister motives. Everyone assumed the gambler attacks were merely stupid stunts driven by the allure of big money. The organizers released a statement overnight, saying, excessively high odds are likely to endanger the safety of participants. We urge that betting odds not exceed tenfold. It was the third notice issued that night, complete with a breakdown of safety concerns. In response, various betting agents grudgingly refunded wagers that had been placed at 100-to-1 odds. If they couldn't offer 100-fold odds directly, they'd simply find a workaround. For instance, they could offer 10-to-1 odds on the Straw Hat Traveler losing his next match in Zone 16, then add another 10-to-1 if he lost within the first hour. Presto, 100-to-1 odds all over again. Where there's a will, there's a way. Each rule change only pushed them to get more creative, finding ways to bundle bets for even higher stakes. The new rules would make things more inconvenient for gamblers, but their creativity was relentless, adjusting quickly to every restriction. The hours slipped by, and soon the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. The sun rose as Lin Youzi drifted into a peaceful sleep, only to be jolted awake by the sound of someone singing outside. The sun is up, I climb the hill, up the hill, I feel the thrill and want to sing. Where is that singing coming from? He mumbled, glancing out the window to find the source of the commotion. It seemed to be coming from the courtyard of their small dorm building, and used for so long. Sure enough, the Bitter Melon Trio had begun training there. Ever since Jiang Yongji nearly lost his match yesterday, his confidence had taken a serious blow, leading him to start training earnestly. Caught up in this serious mood, Su Yongchu and Sun Mingren had joined him in practicing rigorously as well. It was only the second round of matches, and even their strongest, Jiang Yongji, had nearly been knocked out. The two of them, who felt like small fry in comparison, worried that they'd be eliminated right away if they ran into a top opponent. As martial arts majors, they'd enrolled under their real names, and if they lost, the whole school would know. Wanqing's Wuhan University was closely following the martial arts students. Some participants had registered anonymously, meaning their results wouldn't be as public. But Jiang Yongji was different. On the very first day of the competition, he'd been the center of attention, a big fish in a small pond. That short-lived fame had made him cocky. He'd assumed he could dominate with just the basics he'd learned at home, but his narrow escape in the second match brought him crashing down to earth. The shock of plummeting from the heights of confidence made him drop his usual carefree attitude. His face now set in a serious expression as he trained hard. From the first-floor window, Lin Youzi watched their training. No matter how hard an ordinary person trained, they would never be able to surpass a true cultivator. The gap was simply too vast. Keep at it. Maybe you'll create a miracle, he thought to himself, smiling slightly. Then he turned away from the window. With the mystic world's slow invasion of Blue Star, who could say? Maybe some strange twist of fate, like finding a powerful relic or stumbling upon rare herbs, would grant them something extraordinary. Leaving the dorm, he made his way to the security post, where Grandpa Guan sat, leisurely enjoying the air conditioning and watching a live stream. He sure had it good as a security guard. When Lin approached, Grandpa Guan's expression barely flickered as he quickly changed the screen with practiced speed. Still, Lin Youzi caught a glimpse. This old man, watching videos of leggy girls. Quite the lively spirit for his age, he mused, though he greeted the guard politely, pretending not to have noticed. Grandpa Guan, I'm heading to the stables. It's been a while, wonder if my horse will remember me. Ahem, let's go, then, Grandpa Guan replied coolly, straightening his uniform and leading Lin to the stables. At the stables, little Guan, Grandpa Guan's son, was practicing archery while riding a small horse. Ever since he'd learned about his father's impressive skills, he'd been coming here regularly, determined to master the family craft. No way he'd let the Guan family's legacy fade. But right now, little Guan was feeling frustrated after another missed shot. Grumbling, he walked over to retrieve his arrows, only to toss them down in irritation. Grandpa Guan witnessed this and scowled. You little rascal, he shouted, marching over. Is that how you treat your arrows? Looks like someone's asking for the bamboo switch. Dad, it's pointless. Once the horse is moving, I can't hit a thing. Oh, yeah. Then how do you think I managed to hit the target? You've been doing it for years, of course you can hit the target. All right then, how does little Lin manage it? Little Lin. For a moment, little Guan had no comeback. He turned away, crossing his arms with a huff. But then he spotted Lin Youzi standing nearby, smiling. His face went red as he quickly looked away, awkwardly glancing down at his feet. Seeing his son acting shy, Grandpa Guan couldn't help but tease him. What kind of man are you, getting all flustered so easily? You won't be able to hit your target if you're too distracted to look. That's not it. Then you'd better not be. Grandpa Guan paid no further attention to his son's antics, grinning widely as he walked over to Lin Youzi. Little Lin, let's go. Sure. The two of them made their way to the region where the horses were kept. Two sharp whistles pierced the air. From the herd, a horse broke free. It's the little horse. The blood-sweat horse that Lin Youzi had cared for approached, rubbing its neck against him as if scolding him for neglecting it for so long. Ha ha ha, sorry, I've been busy lately. But I'm here now. How about we ride together? The horse neighed, full of spirit. After mounting the horse, Lin Youzi raised an eyebrow at Grandpa Guan. Want a race? Grandpa Guan nodded with a knowing smile. I'd love to. At that moment, there was no difference in their ages, they were like friends and rivals at the same time. The old horse breeders gathered to watch the spectacle. Little Guan also came to stand by, observing. Whoosh, whoosh. Two sharp sounds rang out. The 50-meter target was hit dead center. Good shot. Excellent. Perfect accuracy, always hitting the bullseye. The old horsemen were surprised to learn just how skilled the security chief was. They couldn't understand how someone so capable could be working as a mere security guard. Grandpa Guan was a man of secrets. With skills like his, he could be doing anything. Why choose to be a guard? They thought perhaps he didn't want to reveal his family's secret techniques. After all, there was an ancient saying, the way is not lightly passed on. Maybe he just preferred to keep his talents hidden. But in truth, Grandpa Guan had chosen to be a security guard because Wanqing's Wuhan University was the most martial arts-focused institution in the country. The city itself was steeped in martial arts tradition. Moreover, the university housed a blood-sweat horse and a statue of the martial saint, symbols of its deep connection to martial culture. All of this led Grandpa Guan to settle here. Wanqing, after all, was a historic city. The famous Battle of Wanqing had taken place here, a battle in which Cao Cao lost his eldest son, Cao Ang, his nephew Cao Anmin, and the general Dian Wei. This battle was won by Zhang Xiu, but the aftermath didn't change the northern power dynamics, although it did lead to a tragedy over the succession rights, affecting many families. Perhaps, if Cao Cao had been less arrogant, controlling his desires and not forcing his late relative's widow into a marriage, the Three Kingdoms era might have unfolded differently. But then again, history is full of what-ifs. That period was long past, and now the land had been covered with layers of bloodshed. History was always tragic in its way. Who knew? Perhaps a year from now, this peaceful time would end, and once again, the smoke of war would rise over the land. The contest came to an end. Winning or losing didn't matter. Lin Youzi had only wanted to reconnect with his horse. Grandpa Guan, I'll be going now. The two exchanged a knowing glance, silently acknowledging their shared understanding without asking about the martial arts competition. Lin Youzi could feel that Grandpa Guan was waiting for the right moment to have a fair, open fight with him. Perhaps their identities had already been revealed to each other long ago. As he turned to leave, their eyes met, and Lin Youzi gave a faint smile. Right. Grandpa at the park. Yes, the cloaked guest. The martial arts tournament was now on its 6th day, marking Lin Youzi's 3rd match. As usual, he and his 3 roommates had entered the competition. Luck hadn't favored the 2nd and 3rd roommates, they were eliminated, leaving them dejected. The eldest roommate, however, continued his alliance with the Hooded Men, knocking out all 198 competitors in their division. As for the infamous Master Ma's lightning whip technique, it was countered when he encountered an opponent with no regard for traditional martial ethics, a mysterious young man sporting a headband and a hip-hop style outfit, complete with metallic accessories. His weapon of choice? A baseball bat. But despite his flashy appearance, this young man fought with brutal efficiency. With just one punch, he shattered Master Ma's nose, knocking him out cold. The bookmakers began calling this fighter One Punch Man due to his ability to knock out any opponent with a single blow. Then there were the Watermelon Head father and son, who managed to hold their ground. Using their unconventional teamwork and relying on 8 Gates escape, they proved surprisingly resilient. That night, when the Valkyrie took the stage, her opponents all voluntarily left the ring rather than risk being thrown out. It was less embarrassing and saved them from a week of back pain. Meanwhile, the park grandpa took a more restrained approach this time, as if conserving his energy. Standing in the center of the ring with his blade planted in the ground, he looked full of openings, but no one dared approach. Anyone who had tried before had ended up on the floor from a single strike. The spotlight was now on Zone 16, which hadn't attracted much attention until today. An accomplished fighter had entered the ring. The audience erupted with excitement. I know that guy. He's a freestyle fighting star from Lighthouse Country, a lightweight champion. What's he doing in our tournament? Probably entered anonymously. Humph, and now he's showing his face like he's proud of it. Is he here to mock us? The fighter, Johnson, had indeed registered anonymously, using his Huayu girlfriend's name. There was a reason for the crowd's hostility. Recently, it had come to light that Johnson, who had worked as a fitness instructor in Huayu, had managed to conquer over 1,000 women within 3 years, recording private videos with them and posting them on his country's online platform for profit. But it didn't end there, he also set up a paid consultancy to teach others how to exploit women in Huayu for money. Many Huayu men were outraged, but some defended Johnson, saying it was just jealousy. Now, seeing Johnson openly participating, the crowd's anger was directed squarely at him. Straw Hat Warrior, take down this lighthouse scumbag. Yeah, crush him. The organizer heard the commotion in the audience, and the Martial Arts Association president felt a wave of anger. But legally, it was the women's choice to be with him, there was no way to intervene. Johnson's brazen attitude, however, made him furious. In his mind, he entertained the idea of having Johnson shoved in a sack and taught a painful lesson. Most martial artists shared this sentiment. Seeing someone treat their compatriots with such disdain would make any martial artist's blood boil. As one saying goes, when the ministers are prepared to fight to the death, why does the emperor surrender first? They were eager to stand up, but the very people who had been wronged continued to defend Johnson, leaving everyone feeling stifled. They couldn't take matters into their own hands, either, lest they face legal consequences. On the lightweight champion's turf, ordinary people would stand no chance. And martial artists, bound by law, found their hands tied. But here, in the ring, the laws no longer applied. As long as there was no intention to kill or inflict grievous harm, no law could touch them in this arena. Understanding the situation, Lin Youzi was clear on one thing: this arrogant fighter from the Lighthouse Nation was in desperate need of a reality check. This time, he didn't bother cleaning up the field, he walked straight toward Johnson. "Oh ho. So you're supposed to be the best here? Watch me show you how it's done." Johnson raised his fists in a classic fighting stance, confident and cocky. As a freestyle fighting champion, his natural talent was clear in every movement. Lin Youzi, unbothered by the bravado, drew his twin short blades, his voice cold. "To act so brazenly in Huayu, there's no way I'll let this slide." With that, he pushed off hard from the ground, using the momentum to slash both blades toward Johnson's neck in a swift, direct attack. His speed was astonishing. The audience barely had time to process what had happened. They had to rely on the high-speed cameras to replay it in slow motion, where they saw the Straw Hat Warrior advancing in a straight line with each powerful step. Standing behind Johnson, Lin Youzi had an unsettling feeling, sensing that his strike hadn't quite landed. As expected, Johnson had crossed his arms to guard his neck, successfully blocking the attack. "Fast, but not fast enough," Johnson taunted, turning to face Lin Youzi and brandishing his fists. The gloves on his hands bore the emblem of his nation. This man was no ordinary fighter, he was a realm practitioner. Name: Johnson. Gender: male. Stage: human stage, 4th rank. Ability: impact. So that was as fast as a regular person could go, Lin Youzi thought. And even at that speed, he hadn't been able to break through Johnson's defense. This only confirmed that Johnson, like him, had likely gained his realm abilities early. In the stands, Qian Wujin watched with a twisted smile. An arrogant foreigner. Doesn't matter who he is. If he's one of them, he's an enemy of the realm's ruler, and of me, he thought darkly. Looks like the Straw Hat Warrior's going to lose. The fact that the Straw Hat Warrior could even be injured by a regular attack showed, at most, that he was just a strong ordinary person. His previous speed only reinforced that theory. And now, with Johnson revealed as a realm practitioner. Qian Wujin chuckled, eager to see the scene of another realm soul falling before him, ready for the taking. For those like him, the fastest way to increase power was through slaughter and absorption. By devouring the soul of a fallen realm peer, he could elevate his strength without waiting for Mystic Realm OL to fully descend. Back in the ring. Johnson's fists swung in controlled arcs, and Lin Youzi sensed a strange force emanating from each punch. The shockwaves from his strikes were almost solid, making them impossible to block directly. Forced to backpedal, Lin Youzi focused on finding an opening to counter. But this sight made the audience uneasy. What's happening? Why is the Straw Hat Warrior getting pushed back? I knew it. The Lighthouse Nation fighters are the strongest. If we let more foreign fighters enter, they'd easily take the top spots. Exactly. Our martial arts are just for show, flashy but useless in real fights. These voices came from those who trained in foreign fighting styles and looked down on local martial arts. For people like this, no amount of explanation would change their minds. Only strength could silence them. The audience's hopes were now firmly pinned on the Straw Hat Warrior, they wanted him to win and prove Huayu's strength. Of course, there were also those rooting for him to lose, the gamblers. Gamblers were everywhere, placing bets on both sides.